Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay? Wonderful. Well, thank you. I'd like to start by thanking you and Ms. Kaplan for your flexibility and understanding due to a childcare hiccup today. That meant the absolute world to me, and appreciate you letting me present remotely. I'll be very brief. This is the bill's second stop, Senate File 1003, prohibits homeowners associations from outright bans on their residents installing solar rooftop panels. One of 4 Minnesotans live in one of the state's more than 7,700 homeowners associations. And many of these Minnesotans we've heard from want the opportunity to invest in their homes, be greener, and lower their energy bills. 27 other states, including our neighbors in Iowa and Wisconsin, have laws that limit HOA restrictions on residential solar installations. This bill balances HOA homeowners' rights with the HOA association duties because they still have input. It still allows HOAs to establish certain requirements, like that it's done by a licensed contractor, that the panels don't extend beyond certain points of the roof, that the installer reimburse them for damages, etc. And with that, Mr. Chair, I do have a testifier. I'm not sure if you want them to go first or have your team walk through where the judiciary part of this comes in.
Yourself and your affiliation and proceed with your testimony.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. For the record, my name is Logan O'Grady. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Solar Energy Industries Association. We haven't been at this committee yet this year, so just as a quick introduction, MNSEA is a 501c6 trade organization made up of over 140 member companies who do business throughout the state of Minnesota in the solar and energy storage industries. Altogether, our 140 members employ over 5,000 Minnesotans in family-sustaining jobs, and we're very proud of their work. Our role today is to provide an industry perspective to this bill. Obviously, what we do is we try to eliminate barriers to our businesses, and obviously if you're completely prohibited from doing business in a certain community, that's a significant barrier to overcome. So as Senator Coleman mentioned, this bill adds to Chapter 500 of statute limits on real property. It prevents HOAs from just precluding anybody from doing solar right away. It places reasonable restrictions still on the solar that you can do in an HOA, and it still gives HOAs the ability to approve or deny solar projects. So overall, this bill really balances Minnesotans' rights to do whatever they would like to do with their properties, especially if it saves them money and cuts their energy costs, but it also balances the rights of HOAs to still have oversight. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Grady. Bobby King, go ahead. Identify yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Chair Latz and members. My name is Bobby King. I'm the Minnesota State Director for Solar United Neighbors. We work with Minnesotans from around the state to educate them about solar, and we coordinate group buys to help people go solar. So our constituency is folks that are interested in solar on their farm, home, or small business. I'm here to testify in support of the bill. We get several calls a month from frustrated HOA homeowners that got a proposal for solar, and usually the reasons for pursuing solar are threefold. People want to reduce their energy costs, which solar can do significantly. They want to stabilize their energy costs. Once you pay for the solar, you know what your energy costs are going to be, and many folks are proud to be producing renewable energy. Most HOAs that I'm familiar with are silent on the issue of solar panels. They're considered an architectural modification, and so when they apply for that, they're quickly denied or even discouraged from applying. And especially with the Inflation Reduction Act creating strong incentives for homeowners and small businesses to go solar, there's a really strong interest in solar now. HOA homes are often built in former farm fields. There's no shade trees, the roofs are large. They're ideal for solar. In my experience, a lot of the nervousness about solar is based on outdated thinking about what solar looks like. It's a mature industry. put up flush with the roof, even with the roof line. They actually look nice and increase property values. So we hope that Minnesota can become one of the 27 other states that allows HOA homeowners to go solar while giving the HOA some say over what it looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Is there anyone else in the room wishes to testify in connection with this bill? You aware of any stakeholders, HOA associations, anything like that, that have any difficulties or opposition to the bill at this time?
Mr. Chair, if I may, we did work with the Homeowners Association, and they are not in opposition to this bill.
Wonderful. Any discussion from members of the committee? Questions, comments, concerns? We have a resident real estate attorney expert here. Don't have to, not compelled to say anything, Senator Kroon, just noting your presence. All right, is there a motion? Senator Oumou Verbeten. Goes back to him.
Mr. Chair, yes, I move that Senate File 1003 be recommended to pass and re-referred to the Utilities, Environment, and Climate Committee.
Senator Oumou Verbeten moves that Senate File 1003 be recommended to pass and be re-referred to the Senate Committee on Utilities, Environment, and Climate. All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? The motion prevails. Thank you, Senator Coleman and
Thank you.
testifiers. Members, we're going to move on to Senate File 1549, Senator Champion. As he's approaching the testifier table, I'll just note our schedule for today. We are going to get a few of what I believe will be some smaller bills out of the way. We're going to take on the cannabis bill. Yet this morning, we're going to recess when that is done, hopefully around noon for 30 minutes, so members have a chance to have some lunch, and then we will reconvene. It's my intent and my hope to be done before dinner time so that I don't have to buy pizza for the committee. Members, that's the plan. We'll go now with Senate File 1549. Senator Champion, go ahead and introduce your bill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the committee for taking the time to listen to Senate File 1549. Mr. Chair, I understand that we have a couple amendments, and I'd like to know what you would like for us to do. There appears to be the A1 amendment, and then also SC 0388. Or maybe that's it.
Well, Senator Champion, we are having the amendments distributed. We have the A1 in front of us. There's a separate A2 amendment.
That's probably what it is, Mr. Chair.
Well, is it your desire to adopt both of the amendments, Senator Champion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and I can explain the two amendments if you like for me to the best of my ability.
Well, we don't have the A2 handed out yet, but we'll go ahead and ask the staff to do that. We'll treat the, this is your first committee stop, but we've got two amendments to present to us.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Why don't we go ahead and have your testifiers proceed while we are getting copies of the A2 made for distribution to the committee.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chair, what is before you is grants for at-risk use. Detention can have a profound impact on the life outcomes for youth and must be used only in cases where risk to the child's health and welfare or public safety risks exist. And research shows that youth can come into contact with the juvenile justice system, are more likely to sustain or increase their level of delinquent behavior. Severe sanctions can result in increases in future delinquent or criminal involvement rather than a decline. We also know that we've had a number of different issues that have involved our young people, and I think it's important for us to address those challenges. And in fact, this bill that is before you happened as a result of gathering public defenders, law enforcement, judges, and others who are part of the juvenile justice system. And what it was discussed and learned is that prevention, intervention services are necessary that will interrupt the cycle of unlawful behavior and encourage an environment that allows our young people to reach their God-given potential. I just believe that where our heart is, that's where our treasure is. And so I'm asking for us to make the necessary investments in order to, deal with our young people. We know that research at various levels show that youth of color, including indigenous youth, are often overrepresented at stages of the justice system, and focus on accountability and sanctions while underrepresented at stages intended to curtail deeper system involvement or provide community-based services. What we also try to prevent is the approach that's outlined in this bill allows various communities to tailor their responses to how they should deal with young people and not create what I like to refer to as a one-size-fits-all. I think it should be very thoughtful, and so these grants would allow various folks across our wonderful state to be reactive to our young people in a real way. And I have two testifiers, well, I have more than two, but two that are at the table right now. We'll hold off on Mr. Lundy until after we get the amendment before this body. But Kate Weeks, who is the Executive Director of Office of Justice Programs with the Minnesota Department of Public Safety, is with us, and she can provide brief testimony.
Thank you, Senator Champion. You'd like to start with Ms. Weeks?
Yes.
Ms. Weeks, welcome back to the Judiciary Committee. Go ahead and introduce yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Chair Latz. Good morning. My name is Kate Weeks, Executive Director of the Office of Justice Programs. Thank you for the time today to talk about the need for additional investments for youth programming in Minnesota. The Minnesota Office of Justice Programs currently provides grant funding for a majority of programs identified in Senate File 1549 through our community crime prevention grants, youth intervention grants, federal Title II delinquency grants, and through crime victim services funds. These programs have historically offered tremendous return on investment. However, through our competitive grant program, we continually see significantly more requests than we have funding available. For example, during the last full competitive RFP process for community crime prevention grants, OJP received $6.5 million in requests for $2.5 million available. During the last full competitive process for the Youth Intervention Program grants, OJP received $12 million in requests for only $6 million available. For disparities reduction prevention grants, currently we receive $850,000 per year through the federal government, and this investment has decreased by 85% since 2002. During the last full competitive process, OJP received over $7 million in grants in requests for only $1.6 million available. The governor's budget also recommends additional investments in all of these areas as we recognize the importance of programs dedicated to prevention, engagement, intervention, reducing barriers to service, and community support. Our office maintains a commitment to ensuring that all communities have access to funding opportunities to support the critical work on a local level. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weeks. And Commissioner Lundy.
And Mr. Chair, can I interrupt just one quick second?
Senator Champion.
He's going to testify to not just the bill, but to one of the amendments, because there's a task force that we are asking for. And so I was hoping that the committee will first move the A1 amendment, which is just inserting that federally recognized Indian tribes are all, within the boundaries of Minnesota would also be eligible for the grants that are articulated in the file.
Senator Champion, I've been advised by counsel that this A1 amendment is basically a technical amendment and that we could incorporate it into the A2 amendment and do it all as one author's amendment.
Sounds good.
So I'm going to recognize Senator Oumou Verbeten to move the A2 amendment, incorporating in it the content of the A1 amendment as well.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Any questions about the amendment? We're going to consider this the author's amendment. This is the first committee stop in the First Amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. All right. Commissioner, welcome to the Judiciary Committee.
Thank you, Chair Latz and members. My name is Jeff Lundy. I'm Hennepin County Commissioner for District 1, also Chair of the Public Safety Committee for the county. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to testify before the committee today about the need for a youth interventions task force. To keep my comments brief, there is a noted lack of system capacity in the state of Minnesota to provide therapeutic and rehabilitation services to youth. The inadequate number of available options has led to significant resource challenges and fragmentation. Services must be tailored to the needs of children and families rather than a one-size-fits-all. In some cases, out-of-home placement or residential treatment may be appropriate, but it's imperative to expand capacity across the continuum in order to reduce the duration of out-of-home placement or residential treatment, providing community-based integration interventions. We are proposing a task force to assess the current systems and resources for addressing the therapeutic and rehabilitation services needs of children, especially those adjudicated as CHIPs or delinquent, identify strengths, weaknesses, gaps, and make recommendations for improvement. It is anticipated that task force would make findings and offer recommendations, including identify gaps and racial disparities in the system, identify priority areas for developing needed resources, and offer recommendations on the role the state of Minnesota should play in ensuring best practices resources are available to all youth across all of Minnesota. This task force would have subject matter experts from the state, counties, from our providers, and experts in mental health, behavioral health, and most importantly, members of the community who have lived experience of a juvenile family involved with justice system. The work of this task force can have significant impact on the way we provide services to youth in our state. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you, Commissioner. Glad you came here all the way from Hennepin County.
And Mr. Chair, we
Senator
also
Champion.
have Mickey Frost with us. Right here. Oh, here we go. And then
Senator Champion, before that, we have Latanya Reeves, who is joining us on Zoom. Ms. Reeves, let's go to you next. Welcome to the Judiciary Committee. Go ahead and introduce yourself and proceed.
Thank you. Excuse my voice this morning. Thank you, Chair Latz and committee members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Latanya Reeves. I am Chair of the Minnesota Civilian Public Safety Commission. I'm really excited for this file, Juvenile Intervention Services and Barrier Reduction Services relating to youth involved or at risk of becoming involved in the criminal justice system is so important for families as they do their best to take care of their children. We as an organization want to make sure that our children have what they need to be successful in their lives. Parents are usually the first ones to notice when their children are having issues either with substance abuse, mental health, criminal intent, or acquaintances that are challenging. As a parent, I've had to deal with the system that did not allow me access to services because my son was not justice involved. I called, begged, and pleaded with social services to provide programming for my son. Doors were closed time and time again. And all while being a single parent of 3 Black boys, trying to keep them safe and out of the hands of those who meant them harm. My son, Savion, is in prison currently for 16 and a half years. I did everything that I could to save my son, asked for help over and over again. I do believe that if I got the help that I asked for, when I saw the issues, when I saw them come up, that my son wouldn't currently be incarcerated. We need to, as parents, need to be listened to when we're talking about what's going on in the system, when we're talking about our children needing help and services, because they're not justice involved, shouldn't deny them access to programming. We need wraparound services so that we can save our children. And I'm really grateful this is being brought forward, especially when we're talking about the barriers and the reduction to those barriers. Because as a single parent and someone who works in the system, I was not able to get services for my son. And I hope that no other mother or no other father has to go through what I went through in trying to save my son from a city, from a community that was trying to take him from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reeves, for your heartfelt testimony. Appreciate you being here today. Senator Champion, you want to go next with Mickey Frost?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right. Ms. Frost.
Good morning. Good morning.
I didn't know which one.
That's me.
I saw you approach after he said the name, so I wasn't sure. Mr. Frost, go ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Mickey Frost, and I'm the founder of the 8 to 18 Truth Center. These is centers that I built right here in St. Paul to help deal with the violence and also mentor kids here in the city as they go through these tough times. I work with the Juvenile Detention Center. I'm inside of some of the high schools here in St. Paul, and it's just a tragedy in what's taking place here in these communities. We often come and we ask our elected officials for the help that we need because we put these elected officials in these seats to take care of our communities and give us the help that we need, and oftentimes we are looked past and we don't receive that help. I can ask, does anybody know what it feels like to stand in between two individuals that are holding guns, pointing them at each other and vowing that they're going to use those weapons to harm the next person? I don't think many know what that feels like, but I do, because I stand there all the time in front of individuals that feel that way and are seeking to do harm and create more, tragedies here in our community. I can't do that alone. A lot of us are seeking and searching for ways to, help and include others in these matters so that we can be out there to help these kids in these communities, because we must realize that if we do not stop a fire while it's on one part of the town, it will spread to another part of the town. A lot of people don't understand that the problems and the tragedies that these kids are going through and that these families are going through in these communities most likely are because they don't feel and live in these communities where these tragedies are taking place. But these aren't just camp stories. These are real live people that are going through these problems in their lives, and they are just seeking and asking for this help. I think that a lot of us need to understand that the money that is out here that can help save a lot of these communities, that will also help save our communities, whether you live in those or not, is just, we need to understand that we need to be there for each other. And I think that this is a time that we can say, stop the bickering amongst the legislators and start to say we can be there to help these communities. And I'm here to testify to say we need that.
Thank you, Mr. Frost, for your work and for your testimony here today.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I don't have your name on our list, so happy to take your testimony. Go ahead and introduce yourself and proceed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Latz and members of the committee. My name is Malaika Abon. I am the Interim Executive Director at the Legal Rights Center in Minneapolis, and I'm here proudly in support of Senate File 1549 and all of the opportunities it provides for our communities to really build out a community of care and a continuum to meet the needs of young people across the state of Minnesota. The opportunities to invest in prevention services, intervention services, barrier reduction services are all critical. And in our organization's work, as we represent young people involved in the justice system, we hear from them and from their families, from victims and community members, about the need to have a robust system in place to help both keep them out of the system and, once they're involved in the system, to provide the interventions at the level appropriate to the needs of those young people. We really support this bill. As a member of the Minnesota Coalition for Youth Justice, we hear from youth workers and other organizations all the time who are really looking for support from our state in order to provide the resources that they're already provisioning, and also to invest in new models and ways of connecting with young people who are harder to reach. So we really hope that this has an opportunity this year to deeply invest in our communities. Thank you, Senator Champion.
Thank you, Ms. Acom. Senator Champion.
Mr. Chair and committee, that's it. We talk a lot about young people. Here's an opportunity for us to interrupt this cycle of challenge, also providing families with the support that they need. And again, there was a cross-section of people that got together and talked about the needs. So, Mr. Chair, I hope that the committee will pass it and refer to state and local governments, because I don't need it in jobs. This would be something that needs to go there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Champion. I'm going to note that there is a robust provision in the bill with regard to reviewing, understanding, and reporting on the grant program, its recipients, providing data for review after the fact as well, so that we can assure ourselves that the money has been used well and with strong organizations that'll be able to provide this kind of services. And I appreciate that this is particularly targeted at certain at-risk communities as well, which is a good thing to do. I believe we had talked about something like this a number of years ago when we were working on a larger equity package in the legislature, and we could never bring all of that to fruition, so I'm glad to see this coming to us. I'm also going to note that the money that is in this bill is going to be carried by Senator Champion in his committee's budget, which will enable us to use whatever our target is to focus, among other things, on youth intervention in a broader statewide sense as well. So is there any committee discussion, questions, comments at this time? Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Senator Champion.
Good morning.
I am looking over the language on the A2 amendment, and the question I have, I started to count up the membership on the task force. As near as I can figure, it's got 20 members. Am I right in that? And I know this is a focus on youth as well as a therapeutic perspective, but nevertheless, I was somewhat curious why there's only one police officer that would be on the committee or task force, and one police officer has to come from one of 10 counties. So that's kind of curious to me. Could you explain to me the reasoning why there's only one law enforcement? And I could reference you to page 1, line 18 of the A2 amendment.
So,
Senator Champion.
Mr. Chair, I also have Mr. Lundy that's here that can also speak to it as well. But it is my understanding what they tried to do is come up with a task force that had a cross-section of perspectives to it. So that includes, both public defenders, the Minnesota County Attorneys Association, because we do still look at them as an arm of law enforcement as well. And then we also see that there's 2 representatives from the Minnesota Association of Community Corrections at counties as well, and probation officers. And then there's a list. But again, from my understanding, they try to come up with a cross-section of folks. And there are opportunities for others to designate someone. So I'm sure that the task force is totally open to others who could potentially, speak to this from law enforcement as well as from another county as well.
Commissioner Lundy.
Thank you, Chair. Senator Limmer, I think one of the things that the members of the task force will often represent broader groups. So you will have a person that may be a police officer, but they will be connected with a larger group that will provide input. And so typically, like as myself, I serve on a cannabis task force on behalf of the counties. I represent multiple counties, not just my county. So we would anticipate that law enforcement person will represent a broader base and will have access to other opinions that they will bring forth to that process.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Limmer.
The reason I brought it up, it seems like it's grossly disproportionate to have only one formal law enforcement officer on the task force, whereas you have 2 representatives from social service administrators, 2 from Community Corrections Act counties, 2 from community supervision folks from Minnesota Association of County Probation Officers. Now you have 4 from probation officers, 2 from appointed by the Human Service Commission, and then, of course, you have more people from corrections from designated by the Commissioner of Corrections, and then you get into other sundry members, but that's the only concern I have on the membership. 20 members. I've been on commission or task forces before. You start getting to 20 and it gets to be really blurry, and quite often members that actually do the services for individuals, as you get into it, it all becomes self-protection, and they start looking out for their own discipline, thinking that the task force will make some recommendations in the future on how to do things. And quite honestly, they like to be in front of the line when it comes to those contracts. The other focus I wanted to direct our committee on is what we're asking the task force to determine. That starts on lines 3.3. That is a very, very big grocery list of things to get done in approximately 7 or 8 months. Like I said, I've got a lot of experience being on task forces. Going on the last page, on page 4, starting on 4.5, this is really where it starts getting into more of the meat of the direction. You can go through the others, and it's just basically, well, some of them are a little tougher than others. Some are just, what's the type of facility? Where's it going to be located? Pretty easy to do. But you start getting into what's the therapeutic and rehabilitative needs of youth. I think I could make a pretty good list if I got on the internet for a few minutes. But then going to the last page, starting on 4.5, where we start talking about identifying barriers of discharge or describe community-based programming and various treatment models. Provide data specific to current total capacity. And then you get into the others on the 410, provide research models and best practices. 413, describe the role of the state of Minnesota. Each one of those could take 7 or 8 months to develop an adequate report that is worthy of legislative consideration. So if I can condense it down to this, you got a lot of people that you're going to be on this task force. They come with a variety of enlightened self-interest, and then you give them a lot of things to do. I'm just concerned about the quality of that report that's going to be demanded middle of February next year in 7 months. So, and don't get me wrong, I think we should focus on mental health and therapeutic model. But I also look at it as something that has to be at the side of the criminal justice system as well. It should not be, and I hope the report doesn't come back that says, let's get rid of the criminal justice model altogether and let's go with the softer therapeutic model. But it seems like all of the task force members seem to be coming from that discipline. So what can you do to assure me that's going to be a balanced report?
Well, Mr. Chair.
Senator Champion.
Senator Limmer, thank you for that exhaustive list of things that you're concerned about. But what I will say, I recognize that it comes from a good place, and we will continue to look at whether the composition of the task force meets what we would consider our important standard as well as yours, to look at diversification, because we're certainly not trying to impanel a task force to be in the echo chamber. We are really interested in how do we provide the insight and direction and support for our young people. Last but certainly not least, even when it comes to the focus of the task force itself, we do recognize that it's a large lift, but just like any task force, it needs to be extended. If there's something else that needs to be focused on, or if they need to do something, they would certainly correct in a way that we believe to be responsible, because everyone wants to do what's in the best interest of young people. No one is there to do anything else other than that. So thank you for that, and I don't know if Mr. Lundy has any brief comments.
Mr. Lundy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, that right now we do have gaps that we see tomorrow and next day, and so there's a real urgency, and so I think the timeline is aggressive to meet the needs of what we have right now. Right now, Hennepin County is sending youth out of state for rehabilitation services because we don't have them here, or we have youth that are deemed mentally incompetent to stand trial who then are waiting for places to send them, and while they're waiting, we cannot keep them off the, we can't hold them. They have to be, out there. So there's an urgency. The task force does need to move with full speed, and I do appreciate your comments about a good report is most important, and so I believe that we can get it done for you.
Any further discussion in connection with Senate File 1549? Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got one question on the task force on the A2 and then a couple questions on the underlying bill. On the A2, lines 2.20 to 2.22, it says the task force shall be co-chaired by a representative member under Clause 6 from the Hennepin County and the Commissioner of Corrections or designee. Why is, I would imagine, I would have expected this to be kind of a rotating chair with all the counties. Why is Hennepin County the sole co-chair of this task force?
I think it was just a matter of.
Mayor Lundy.
Oh, I'm sorry, my fault.
Well, we don't
Mr.
arrest
Chair.
people who step over the procedures here, so you're safe.
Mr. Chair, just to answer your question, but I think, we, Hennepin County, by sheer size, has, the numbers. We probably have, that idea of that who's going to lead it is probably the people who have the most numbers to bring into the system and are trying to work on the providing the funding. I think your point about the who part is a good question. I think somebody had to put someone in there, so.
Senator Kroon.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up on that, I'll just make it a comment in the interest of time, and I'll move on to the other one. I think since this is, I'm assuming, being laid over, I won't bring an amendment and spend time doing that, but I do think if we're talking about a task force that's going to make recommendations on a statewide system, there would be more buy-in if Hennepin County isn't the sole co-chair year after year in perpetuity.
Senator Kroon, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just to correct procedurally, this is going to go on to state and local government, which is an appropriate committee as well for discussing the makeup of task forces, just FYI. So we will not be laying it over here.
My mistake, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the correction.
Sure.
I would like to see that changed at some place, whether it's that committee or whether it comes back to Judiciary, but.
It's not coming back here, Senator Kroon,
Okay.
just to let you know.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Well, that will be an important consideration for me as whether to support this going forward. And I think it's the right thing to do as well. And to the underlying bill real quick, on lines 2.3, what is the definition or criteria for community organization in this bill?
If you, Mr.
Senator
Chair,
Champion.
if we could have the great senator repeat the question again, that would be great.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On line 2.3 of the underlying bill, the question was, what is the definition or criteria, or however you want to describe it, for what a community organization is under this bill?
Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the senator for the question. I naturally assume that it would be a 501c3 that's recognized by the government as well. That is what I would naturally assume there.
Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I see the nonprofits before the community organization. I would assume that would be where 501c3 would come into play. So that, I guess maybe I'll just ask the question another way. Could that, under this, be a for-profit company that could be the recipient of these grants?
You know,
Senator
Mr. Chair, that hasn't been the intent for it to be a for-profit organization, but certainly I'll get that clarified before the next stop as well, just to make sure I'm sure on that. And then also we'll take a look at the other suggestion that you gave about the rotating chair as well.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think that could possibly be cleaned up to tighten up the definitions of who would be eligible to receive a grant under this program. And then the next question is, are the recipients of these grants solely within the discretion of the Office of Justice of Programs? And if so, what are the criteria that office will use to determine which organizations will receive these grants?
We're going to, Mr. Chair, we're going to
Senator
have Ms. Kate Weeks come up from the Office of Justice Programs who can speak to that question.
Ms. Weeks.
Morning, Chair Latz, members. The Office of Justice Programs follows the Office of Grants Management, grant funding policies and procedures. So we use a competitive grant process where we put out an RFP, people apply, we review those applications, make sure that grantees are eligible for the defined purposes, and that they can meet grant guidelines and requirements.
Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It sounds like there's some kind of generic, general criteria that your office uses. I'm not sure how that's going to be implemented specifically to this in kind of a detail. I have concerns about that. One final question is, are there any mechanisms in this bill to recover any funds that are spent fraudulently?
Ms. Weeks.
Chair, members, if we find that an organization, so what happens is when a grantee is determined, we receive a lot of financial documents, a lot of documents preparing, including work plans, budgets, and then when we use a reimbursement process, so grantees have to spend that money first and then submit what's called, and it's periodic, it could be monthly, it could be weekly, reimbursements for those costs. We look at those reimbursements in that source documentation versus what was in the grant agreement that they would be spending the funds on. And what the funds are eligible for is determined in the bill, and those requirements are in the RFP. So what the legislature determines the appropriations can be used for is what we do. If it's shown that they are submitting expenses for ineligible costs, they will not be reimbursed for those.
Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I understand there'll be looking at receipts and whether or not the expenses are for the items that are listed in the bill, but I'm more concerned about any auditing procedures because we've all been aware of how these types of things can be abused and have been abused and have costed taxpayers dearly. Is there anything in this bill that would allow a clawback if you find out after a reimbursement has already been made that it was for an ineligible purpose? Would you be able to claw that back? And is it in this bill? And if it isn't, can you point me to where that authority would come from?
Ms. Weeks.
Chair Latz, members, I think there's a couple of ways that we do that. One is when an organization, if they submit reimbursements and there's deemed to be an eligible cost, when they seek for the next reimbursement materials, if there's money that was ineligible earlier that is no longer, we take that out of the next reimbursement. So that money is, it would not be paid out. And then there are situations, they are rare, where we expect money to be paid back to the state for ineligible costs.
Senator Kroon.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I mean, we would expect that for sure. I'm just wondering where that is in the bill, and if it's not in the bill, where the authority is in another area that would allow that to happen.
Well, Ms. Weeks, this grant program is going through OJP, right?
Chair, members, it is going through OJP, so there are rules and requirements and policies and procedures that we have, which are included in the grant contract with grantees. But a lot of this authority for grant management actually comes through the State Office of Grant Management, which applies to all state agencies. So there are some rules and regulations within our own organization, but we also have to adhere to the Office of Grant Management state policies and procedures. Yep.
All right, Senator Champion, I share Senator Kroon's general concerns about making sure any grant programs are robustly accountable and well administered. And so I think it's good that this is going through OJP, which has in place and experienced infrastructure relating to grant making generally, because that's a lot of what they do. Any other questions? Senator Westland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Champion, for bringing this forward. What we know regarding crime is that the best way to address crime is to prevent it from happening to begin with. And I appreciate the fact that you have brought forth in this bill two things. First of all, appropriations to actually provide the services to our at-risk youth, but more importantly, to have a task force that is going to work across agencies with community input from communities that are experiencing potentially higher rates of community violence, to make sure that we come up with evidence-based best practices. And I appreciate the work that you're doing to intervene, because when we can intervene and prevent crime to begin with, it saves us money. And it prevents harm to individuals and harm to communities. I view in this bill that there are robust reporting requirements that are going to ensure the proper use of the funds, and that they are required to show measurable outcomes as well. This is a great bill. I, again, appreciate your tireless effort to help youth who are experiencing crisis and trauma in their own lives, and to help them get the interventions that they need to avoid problems later in their life. Thank you.
Any further discussion from members of the committee relating to Senate File 1549? Senator Kroon, final comments.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make an oral amendment to strike community organizations from line 2.3, and then wherever else, Senate Council is going to help me, wherever else that term appears in the bill. I just think that it is too loose of a term. We need to tighten that up. It's not defined, and and I know that it's going on to another committee, but I think it is appropriate for us to do that work right here. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, just
Senator Kroon, it's certainly within the scope of our jurisdiction here, so.
it certainly is.
Senator Champion.
Mr. Chair, if I could say this, I did consult with Mr. Murphy as to why that language, and what I learned is that even though there's nonprofit in the language, sometimes you can deal with a nonprofit that's not necessarily from that community, and that's why it says "and community organizations." So that's the information that I was given. So that's why that language is in there that particular way.
Senator Champion, I'm kind of stepping here at this moment, and are we ready to lay this bill over then? Is there any other questions? I'm sorry, Senator. Oh, an oral amendment. All right. Sorry, I wasn't paying close enough attention.
Madam Chair, I think Senate Council was going to help identify the other areas in the bill that would need to be stricken under the oral amendment. I think that's where we are procedurally.
All right, thank you. We should have Senator Kroon chairing the committee. Mr. Backus.
Madam Chair, members, there's references to grants for community organizations in three places, lines 2.3, 2.22, and 3.7. So you would want to delete those references, and then you'd have to restructure the sentence slightly. If you could give me the authority to do that, if the amendment goes on, I could do that offline.
And Senator Champion, any comment on the amendment?
We will accept the amendment, and if there's a problem, I'll come back to Senator Coleman about it, but we will accept it at this point. And also, if the chair would also give Senate Council the authority to restructure the sentence just to make sure that it's grammatically correct.
Okay, Senator Kroon or Mr. Backus, would you repeat the amendment, and then we'll vote on it.
Yes, Madam Chair. It would be lines 2.3, 2.22, and 3.7. And I believe we could just delete, for example, if you look at line 2.3, delete the first comma, and other community organizations. And then on line 2.2, delete the comma and insert "and." So it'll read, for grants to local units of government and nonprofits to be used.
Okay, members, are you comfortable with the amendment? Then Senator Kroon moves the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion prevails. Is there any more discussion on Senate File 1549? Then I'm looking for a motion.
The motion is to move it to state
Yes.
and local governments.
Senator Westland.
Madam Chair, I would move that Senate File 1549 be recommended to, as amended, be recommended pass and sent to state and local government.
The motion is that Senate File 1549 be recommended, as amended, be recommended to pass and sent to state and local government. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion prevails.
And now,
Then the next bill on the agenda is Senator Champion's House File 55.
that is correct. Thank you. Madam Chair and committee, thank you again for hearing House File 55 and Senate File 19. And I believe that we're going to work off the House file because that has all the amendments and it's up to where it needs to be. But these bills is for an office for missing and murdered black women and girls. The bill will do the following. 1, establish this office. 2, outline the office duties. It's also prescriptive around coordination with law enforcement and other relevant agencies to meet the office's mission or objections. There'll be grants also to organizations, access to data, work with the BCA around operating a missing person alert program, and an appropriation from the general fund. We recognize that there's a need for such an office, and we do have a couple of testifiers. In fact, there's 2 on my list, but I see another that wasn't on my list. But we also have Dr. Verna Cornelia Price, who's the founder of Girls Taking Action, and she's also the co-founder of the Power of People Leadership Institution, and Sawana, who will be coming up, who's the vice chair of the National Black Police Association, and she's also the director of Dakota County Community Corrections. And then, it looks like, okay, and then Lakeisha Lee, okay, and Lakeisha Lee. So we could start, if you will, with brief comments from Dr. Verna Price.
Good morning, committee. Good morning, committee chair. Thanks so much for having us here this morning. My role here this morning really is to talk a minute about the why this office is so very important. Girls Taking Action, that I'm the founder of, for 18 years, we have reached over 5,000 girls in the Twin City metro area. And I can tell you in these 18 years, I have had many a call from mothers with a very simple but very complex and deep question: where's my girl? She didn't come home. Something is going on. I don't know what to do. So this particular office, when I got the call to actually testify, I counted an honor because African-American black girls in this country in particular, unfortunately, we have not been well protected. And I just think that for Minnesota to step up and for the first time to say, yes, we're going to protect black girls, and we're going to make sure that when something happens to a black girl, it's treated just like when something happens to a white girl. And we know that when something happens to a white girl in Minnesota, all of the alerts go on. Every amber goes on. It's all over the TV. And unfortunately, with my black moms, when they call, there's no one answering. There's no police officer coming. There's no one showing up. And they are missing. And they stay missing for a very, very long time. I'm just thankful with Girls Taking Action that because they are part of Girls Taking Action, one of the things that we're doing is we're calling every girl every week, every home every week. So we literally call over 400 homes every week to check on our girls. So when a mom says she's missing, then we can say, you know what, we saw her this last, here's what she's been talking to us about, and then we're able to help. And we have helped, including being in parking lots at Walmart in the middle of the night, being a safe place for girls to run to my car and get in and get out and get them back home safely, all of those things. So I just really urge you, it's beyond asking now, it's urgency. I urge you to go ahead and make this happen for our Black girls who are missing and murdered, and to really be a place of prevention to this happening in Minnesota. Thank you so much for accepting my testimony this morning. Thank you, Senator Champion.
Thank you, Dr. Price. Senator Champion.
This is Lakeisha Lee, who will take a couple minutes, and then we'll go to Sawana Kirtland, who's the Vice Chair of National Black Police Association.
Ms. Lee, welcome to the committee. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Senator Latz, and thank you, committee, for hearing our testimony today. I am Lakeisha Lee. I'm the co-founder of the Brittany Clarity Foundation. I am sister to Brittany Clarity, who went missing for a couple weeks in 2013 and was found murdered. When we called the police let us know, oh, she's 18. She probably ran away with her boyfriend. They did not come immediately to take a missing persons report. I have been the co-chair for the Missing and Murdered African American Women and Girls Task Force, and I've been working on a lot of community conversations. We worked on this bill with a multidisciplinary team and a task force that was really passionate about this work. We've also had community members who are advocates and willing to testify and let you guys know about how this is happening in their lives every day. This isn't something that we've constructed out of nowhere. This is something that has been generations of violence. It's something every day Black women are living and thriving here in Minnesota. We're survivors of violence. We're community members. We work within government agencies. We are advocates, and we're lawmakers also as well. So we have experts, and we're continuing to have community dialogue, but we need your support to have a centralized place for our community to connect with all of what was going on here in the Twin Cities. This is a roadmap for what's happening around our nation, and Minnesota has been doing a great job as being leaders in this. Thank you for hearing this bill today.
Thank you, Ms. Lee, for your testimony. We also have Sawana Kirkland. Come on forward, ma'am. Ms. Kirkland, go ahead and introduce yourself and proceed.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Sawana Kirkland. I am the Director of Dakota County Community Corrections, as well as the National Vice Chair for the National Black Police Association. I am a proud law enforcement and public safety leader, and I have been for over 18 years. I am also a mother. I'm a wife. I'm a daughter, and I'm a sister. And this bill is huge and important. I'm here on behalf of the National Black Police Association, the Minnesota chapter, and we are in full support of this bill to develop a missing and murdered Black women and girls office. NBPA is a nonprofit law enforcement affinity association. We represent many agencies across this state and throughout all of our counties. It's a goal for us to increase representation and visibility of all minority law enforcement officers here in this state. We work on a service and relation-based practice here in Minnesota. Minnesota National Black Police would not be successful without the support and without the support and partnerships in our communities. Nationally, there's estimates that are between 64,000 and 75,000 Black women and girls that are missing. Data shows that Black women are twice likely to be victims of homicide. That data also shows that these cases involving missing and Black women and girls stay open 4 times longer than any other. There's a crisis, and this is an important step forward for the state of Minnesota to work to prevent these incidents of violence, ensure more resources for cold cases, and improve public safety. We respectfully ask members to support this bill and this office. This office will be instrumental and will give families hope and closure. It will also hold those accountable and responsible who commit these heinous crimes. This office is long overdue. the very first of its kind, it could be, in the country, and has an opportunity to develop and be the blueprint and the framework for other countries, not for other countries, but for other states to follow. This is critical. We are in a crisis. We have been in a crisis. And the only thing that we're asking is to have the same resources, the same focus, the same energy, and the same support as other women in this state. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Kirkland. Senator Champion.
Mr. Chair, therein lies the testifiers that we have today. We understood that time was going to be very limited, so we did limit the number of folks who could, but I think the testifiers gave a really good sense of why this office is so important.
Senator Champion, the question arises actually out of the conversation we had on your previous bill about grant administration, which is one of the roles of the proposed office here. Looking at page 4, subdivision 7. And although the proposed office would fall within the Department of Public Safety Office of Justice Programs, the grant administration process is outlined in your bill here as being done by the office that's proposed specifically here relating to missing and murdered African American women. So I wonder if you'd be open to clarifying language that would have the grant-making process be administered through the Commissioner of Public Safety more specifically, and that would be then enable the more robust and already in place infrastructure to be utilized for the grant-making process here.
Mr. Chair, I'm certainly open to that, absolutely.
Ms. Weeks, I know we had staff kind of run this idea past you, since it's likely you'd be involved if there were to be such a change. What is your view on that, Ms. Weeks?
Chair Latz, members, Kate Weeks, Office of Justice Programs. So this office would be housed under the Minnesota Office of Justice Programs, and we would be providing any administrative support, guidance, our fiscal capacity. Our fiscal staff can help with grant administration as well. The office in here would have a grants manager to handle that piece of it. And so if it comes under the authority of the Minnesota Office of Justice Programs, we anticipate with grants, grant administration money to come along with that, and we can support the work of the office. We are absolutely open to comfort language as well in order to make that happen.
Senator Champion, what do you think?
I'm totally open to it as well. And in fact, I already knew that the office supported it and would do the things that they needed to do. And it's my understanding this is also in the governor's budget as well.
So, Ms. Weeks, does the, are you saying that as a matter of course, OJP would be handling the grants, oversight and administration, just because the proposed new office is within OJP? Or are you saying that this, is it a matter of comfort language, or we need to have some clarity just to make sure OJP, in fact, does the manage or oversee the grant administration? Ms. Weeks.
Chair Latz, members, it is my assumption as it comes under the Office of Justice Programs that we would support any grant making that the office is authorized to do to ensure adherence to Minnesota grant management requirements in support. So that is the assumption. It is and we are comfortable with comfort language to make that affirmative in the statutory language.
So, Ms. Weeks, on line 4.32 of the bill, subdivision 7 grants to organizations, it makes reference to the office. So I think office in the bill is probably referring specifically, well, I don't know, you tell me, who's the office that's referred to there? Ms. Weeks.
Chair Latz, members, the office is the Missing and Murdered Black and Women and Girls Office. but the structure of the bill has it placed under the Office of Justice Programs as a whole. So it would be, we would be able to use our finance staff to help with the administration. I anticipate in the governor's bill, there is money for a grants manager to help administer grants that are contemplated in the bill.
And Mr. Chair, if you
Senator
look at
Champion.
lines 1.12, it says Minnesota Office of Justice Programs.
Yeah, I was just looking back on that, Senator Champion. So line 1.10 refers to an office dedicated to preventing and ending the targeting of black women and girls within the Minnesota Office of Justice Program. So it sounds like it'd be an office within an office. Yeah, and that's why I wanted to get some clarity. Maybe we can put some language in to the effect of, on line 4.32, instead of the office, we could say the commissioner in consultation with, just so the lines of responsibility are clear.
Sounds good, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So council has a suggestion for some actual language for this proposal. Mr. Backus.
Mr. Chair, members, in line with what the chair suggested, plus a couple conforming changes, on line 4.32, before office, insert commissioner in consultation with thee, so it will be in consultation with the office. And then on line 5.10, similarly, before office, insert commissioner in consultation with thee. And then on line 5.19, delete may and insert shall.
Senator Champion.
I would see that as a friendly amendment.
Senator Kroon, would you like to make that motion for the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I also had an oral amendment planned for line 4.32, but I don't want to hijack your amendment, or your proposed amendment, and we could maybe do that one next. Probably would be easier, but I'll go ahead and make your motion, the motion on your proposed amendment, as laid out by Senate Council.
So Senator Kroon moves the language that was just described by Senate Council. Is there any discussion? The chief author accepts that as a friendly amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Senator Kroon, you had something else you wanted to address here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This also is on 4.32 now, as that is amended. It doesn't address the amendment that just went through the committee, but it relates back to the previous bill, and just to tighten up some language about here, about the recipients of the grants being community-based organizations. I won't reiterate my thoughts on that from the last bill, but I think it could be tightened up a little bit to include the word nonprofit before community-based organization.
Mr. Chair,
So,
I see
Senator
that as a
Kroon,
friendly amendment.
I've been giving some thought to this since the last bill, and the language that's here is quite common in bills and statutes all over our statute book with regard to grant making, without any tighter language, if you will. So I'm a little bit concerned about setting an awkward precedent here with regard to that. And I respect and I share the concern about having some appropriate guardrails on what organizations would qualify. But I'm also concerned about putting in statute some guardrails that might be unduly restrictive.
Well,
You know,
Mr. Chair.
nonprofit versus for-profit, even if they're a community organization that's doing the work that the purpose of the grant is to advance. I'm less concerned about what their profit-making structure is than I am with whether they do good work and do it efficiently and accountably. So I wonder if we can have a little further conversation about that before we move forward on it. Senator Kroon.
Mr. Chair, thank you. 2 points. One, on the precedent, I don't think this would set precedent on other bills. I think it would just provide clarity, and there may be bills where it is the intent for this to go to for-profit corporations, and then that can be addressed in that, and maybe I should have asked a question to the authors before I proposed the amendment on what the intent was here. But if the intent is for it to go to nonprofits, I don't think there's anything wrong with setting that forth in statute, giving direction to the grant makers, giving them some parameters. And if it's not the intention, then we should have a discussion about it. I think that's kind of where I would fall.
Senator Kroon, to me, the question is whether the intent is to exclude nonprofit, to exclude for-profit organizations that do the work, that may be doing the work that is desired to be done by the grant program. So
Mr. Chair, may I maybe
Senator
just
Kroon.
offer it up as a question to the author, whether that is their intent, and then we can have a discussion. If it is, if it's not, then I think it's an appropriate amendment.
All right, and I think Senator Westland may have had a comment regarding this particular point as well. Let's hear that, and then we'll go to the...
I have both a comment and a question, Mr. Chair.
Senator Westland.
We've already established Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Office, and my question is the language in this bill basically the same language that was used to establish that other office? Because if it is, and we've already passed that into law, I'm not sure why we are parsing out words in this bill.
Yeah, Senator Westland, I have the same question. I've already confirmed with council. There is no grant-making authority or responsibility within the Indigenous Women's Office.
Thank you for...
So this is new language in that regard.
I appreciate that, Your Honor, or Your Honor.
Anytime, Senator Westland.
That's your next stop, I guess, maybe. Confuse my hats.
I make the same mistake myself, Senator.
Yeah, well, Mr. Chair, then I do have a comment, and I think that the point made by you, Mr. Chair, that we have the terms community-based organizations in other bills and throughout statutes, and I'm a little sensitive to the fact that we are trying to sort of micromanage or put other restraints or words in a bill that is dealing specifically with a community of color and specifically an organization that is addressing the Black community. And I'm just noting the fact that we are putting some additional restraints there that maybe we haven't for other organizations. We want community-based organizations who are on the ground working with girls to make sure that they are involved in this process, they are part of this process, and they are the folks who are doing the work. So I know Senator Champion has been very gracious in accepting amendments on the prior bill. I don't think we should amend this. This needs to be community-based organizations, and we should allow the grant-making process to go through, and the Office of Justice Programs is going to help administer those grants and ensure that they are used properly.
And Mr. Chair?
Senator Champion.
Just so that we're clear, I agree with Senator Westland, and the prior bill, when there was that amendment, I'm going to go back and also talk to the others just to make sure that that language doesn't that change isn't so challenging that it prevents them from being able to do the work that they need to do. Because I do think that the chair, as well as Senator Westland, has been correct around community-based organizations, and that's been sort of the language. Now, my thinking was whether it's nonprofit versus something else, and so again, I just want to make sure that we don't make this change as articulated, and that with the last bill, that I'm just letting the chair know that I will go back and talk to the others about that language, because I might end up making a change in state and local governments, unless we want to go back to that bill to deal with that notion. So thank you.
So, Senator Champion, I'm thinking the main goal here, if I'm understanding what Senator Kroon is attempting to do also, is to get our arms around what is a pretty broadly characterized term, just community organization or community-based organization. And to me, I'm less concerned with the profit structure or the corporate status of it than I am just having some sense of accountability around that term. And so it may be that we need to come up with a better defined term for what community-based organization is. Maybe Ms. Weeks can give us some guidelines if her office has something more specific as to how they interpret that term or when they are actually doing grants. So I'm kind of throwing this, it's a bigger discussion, I think, than just around this bill, because it comes up in all sorts of grant-making processes, or we talk about, it's got to be a community-based organization. Well, what is that? And council may have some guidance for us on this as well. Maybe we'll take that input. I guess council's just emphasizing that on a quick search of statutes that we use the term community-based or community-based programs all over the grant-making system and statute. It doesn't seem to be any definition in statute anywhere. So it might be worth spending a little bit of time at some point. I don't want to spend the time this morning here sorting that out, but coming up with a definition for community-based programs or organizations. Senator Kroon, am I channeling sort of your intent here a little bit?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator
I think so. I think we're tracking here. The discussion about for-profit versus nonprofit is one discussion, but then there's also other organizations that wouldn't fall into either of those categories. And so I guess my point is, one, the fact that it exists in statute, well, I wasn't here when any of those laws were made, and that's kind of something that I think does need to be cleaned up across our statute books. This bill is in front of us right now. I agree it could be part of a larger discussion. I just think that in each grant program could be different, depending on what the intent is, and I just think we need to get our arms around what community-based organization means. Does it mean a for-profit corporation? Does it mean some association or group of people that are not incorporated, to people getting together, submitting a grant request? I think we need to give more direction to the grant makers, get our arms around the universe we're defining, and give some legislative oversight on that, because we are the keeper of the public purse here. And so that is my intention in making this amendment, and I'm happy to be part of a larger conversation around it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Champion.
If I can make sure that we're really clear and why there's been some confusion here. My understanding is that when we think in terms of the language of statutes, it usually says something like local governments, tribal, and community-based organizations. And the reason for that difference is so that you can clearly see the difference in possibility. It's my understanding that traditionally, when they say community-based organizations, it's usually a 501c3 because that's who they contract with. What was confusing about the last written piece or last bill was because it had nonprofits in there and local governments, and then it says, and community-based organizations. So that's where there was that repetition, even around intent, which is why I was initially okay with removing community-based organizations, because you already had nonprofits in there. But in the event that there needs to be some different comfort language, I recognize that, but I would like to keep the language as we have it currently articulated in this bill, because it does show the distinction between the various levels of government.
Ms. Weeks, can you give us a little better clarity on how your office interprets the language community-based programs or organizations in deciding to whom grants are made? Ms. Weeks.
Chair Latz, members, I agree with President Champion. We do look to see for community-based organizations if they are a 501c3 on the Secretary of State's website before we proceed with granting.
So you said you look for it. Does that mean it's a requirement that you will not issue a grant unless they're a 501c3?
Chair members, that is my understanding of our policy and practice.
Okay. That's good to know, because this is not going to be the last grant program that comes before us either. So it's helpful to know there's that level of accountability and screening already in place. So the question is whether or not we feel a need to add a statutory provision something to that effect or not. Senator Westland.
I'll be brief. Mr. Chair, again, to reiterate what Mr. Backus has said, if you do just a really quick Google search, Minnesota statutes, community-based organizations, it's used frequently in statute, frequently, for so many things. And I think to exclude that term from something so important as this is to say, once again, to a community, we're not carving out people from the community here. We're going to have a bunch of other people coming into your community and telling you what you need to do. We have to absolutely empower the community to be part of the solution to the problem and to addressing this issue. And again, to carve out an exception for a bill dealing with black girls when we don't make that distinction in other statutes, I think is pretty obvious to folks listening to it why the distinction is there. So let's make sure that the community is involved in the decisions that are being made about the issues that impact that community.
Mr. Chair.
I can assure everyone here that we are going to have a lot of grants coming before us in the next week and a half that cover a wide range of targeted community groups or purposes well beyond the scope of this bill, including our standard appropriations for youth intervention programs, for YIPA in Minnesota, and the language in statute already says community-based programs for that statute as well. So I'm looking at this as a much bigger question. It's also going to be coming over from the House and be part of our budget, programs relating to violence prevention without any targeting or specificity with regard to any particular communities. Just so to me, this is an issue I've raised last year, 2 years ago, with regard to the public safety violence prevention proposals, conversations I had with House colleagues that work in the same space. So to me, it's an ambiguous term that we are getting some clarity on that will help us understand accountability when we issue hundreds of millions of dollars worth of grants in Minnesota. So to me, it's a conversation worth having. It's unfortunate that it's happening today in this particular bill as it's coming up. But I think it's a much bigger question than the bill that's just before us today. So I'm going to support Senator Champion's resistance to making any change to the language in this bill. But I think the conversation needs to happen, especially with the clarity from Ms. Weeks that it is 501c3s that are the only community-based organizations that are lawful recipients based on their own protocols. But I think it is a bigger conversation that we're going to have, but I'm not going to spend the next hour having it here today. With all candor, we have a long agenda, a lot of stuff to accomplish today, and we're not going to fix the entire community-based grant program here in Judiciary at this time. Senator Limmer, you had indicated you wanted to speak as well.
I did, Mr. Chairman. Before I ask the question, I just wanted to make a comment that in the background in the last few years, we've had a number of organizations that have used public money and it's been abused, and so there's a sensitivity to definition. And I think it's appropriate for Senator Cruin, who's brand new here, to raise those questions. We're dealing with our public's taxpayer money, and so it's appropriate to define it and where it goes. Having said that, I did have a broader question that perhaps Senator Champion, you could answer for me, or one of your testifiers. As you remember, we created a few years ago, and we passed in a different majority, the Office for Native American Women and Relatives I think that's the appropriate term. And I think it's because the more they studied the issue wasn't just focused on Native American women and girls. That's why they added the term relatives. I'm looking at the title of this bill here, and it's focused on black women and girls. Is there, I guess maybe I should ask a background question. How many missing murdered black women and missing black women and girls are there in the state of Minnesota? Do we have any scale to determine what this issue is? And is it only focused on female, or is it also young boys?
Mr.
Senator
Chair,
Champion.
Thank you, Senator Limmer, for that question. So just so that we're clear, this particular office inherently includes all black women murdered, missing, girls as well, right? And so that's why they made that distinction between women and girls too, just to really make sure that it's the full gamut. Also, I don't know the exact number as it pertains right now, but perhaps my testifier does. Ms. Lee.
Ms. Lee.
Over 60,000 black women and girls are missing in the United States total. As far as Minnesota goes, we're only 7% of the population here, but over 40% of domestic violence victims here in Minnesota. So it is a crisis, and black women are nearly 3 times more likely to be murdered in the state than white women in Minnesota.
So,
Senator Limmer.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So do we have a number of, I suppose, murdered black women could, I don't know how many years back we go to determine that, or let's just focus on the missing. I'm trying to get an idea of the extent of the issue here in our state.
Mr. Chair, Limmer.
Senator Champion.
I don't know the specific number, but it's my understanding that that's a part of the report as well. It says that there's a need, but they don't know the exact number. So I don't know the exact number, but I'll be happy to ask that question to get that information back to you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank you for your overall thoughts on this issue. I do think it's important. I just want to make crystal clear that despite any comments to the contrary, my intentions of this are focused on the broader issue and getting definitions. And if there are bills that have come through our committee where I didn't raise this, I'm happy to go back and revisit that, because I do think this is about the larger issue, creating definitions. And just because this term is littered throughout our statute books doesn't make it good law or the best way we could approach the issue, particularly in light of events that have happened. This is the bill that's before us right now, and I think that is the purpose of Judiciary Committee, is to have these discussions without kind of impugning the motives on what bill it happens to be before, because my intentions are specifically with what Judiciary Committee does, creating good law, good consistent law across the statute books. And I want to make that very clear that that's the intention of what my amendment was going for. It has nothing to do with the merits of the program that's being proposed. I haven't said anything about that. It's that I'm really focused on this issue in a broader sense. And because perhaps we need to have a broader discussion about this, we don't have to do this work right here. I agree with you, especially with a particularly large agenda. But I do think it's a conversation we need to be having with all of these grant programs to get some defined terms around who the recipients of these grants are. Maybe some general definitions. Maybe it's specific to each bill and what the intent of the author and the intent of the program is. But I just wanted to make that clear. And with all that said, I'll withdraw my amendment because I do think this is part of a bigger discussion, and I would be happy to be a part of it. Thanks.
Senator Kroon withdraws his proposed amendment. Not seeing any further discussion in connection with House File 55 as amended. No, just House File 55 as amended. Senator Oumou Verbeten moves that House File number 55 as amended be recommended to pass and be referred to the Senate Committee on State and Local Government. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. Thank you, Senator Champion and members, for the discussion today. All right. Get rid of this first. Members, we are going to turn now to Senate File 73. Senator Port can join us as we Senator Kroon, I'm going to encourage you to follow up on the topic with any other interested members, including the Office of Justice Programs and Council, and maybe we can set the table for a broader discussion on the previous topic at a later time. We're going to take a moment, members, to pass out the packet to the members and get ourselves prepared to begin on Senate File 73. All right, members, staff has distributed amendments. There were also some amendments in your packet, and the amendments are available to the public in the back of the room. Senate File 73 is the proposal relating to cannabis. We did have a hearing on this already, members, back on January 26. At that time, we indicated that we would take testimony for that if people wanted to testify. Members of the public wanted to participate by testifying at that time. They were welcome to do so. We also indicated at that time that we were not intending to open the floor up when it came back to Judiciary for another lengthy list of testifiers. There have been, 10, 12 stops already in other committees. There has been ample opportunity for the public between our initial hearing and those other committee stops to participate and offer their testimony in connection with this bill. We're not going to use the judiciary time to rehear testimony that's already been presented to other committees or to us. We do have a couple of testifiers for this morning that are going to be offering some perspectives that I believe have not been presented at other committees or that are particularly focused on judiciary issues. There are some who did want to testify on the underlying bill that we have indicated we're not going to be hearing additional testimony on that. That's not specifically related to the judiciary elements of the bill. Also, there are some who want to testify that would be offering testimony for judiciary-related topics that others are already testifying on today relating to judiciary topics. So we're not going to do the duplicative testimony either. That way we can keep focused on the specific work that the matters come back to the Judiciary Committee for. So, Senator Port, before we jump in.
Mention to members that we do have this list that people want to refresh themselves. I'm not going to go through it unless you need me to, but it's there for members to read.
Members, in your packet, there is a list that specifically identifies the provisions in Senate File 73 that are within the Judiciary Committee's jurisdiction. Mr. Backus had already gone through, and it's been handed out as well. Mr. Backus went through this list, identifying these provisions at our first hearing on Senate File 73. We are not going to have him go through that again today, but it is there for your reference. Senator Limmer, did you have a preliminary question or comment?
Just a brief comment, Mr. Chair, in regards to testifiers. I know that this bill has traveled to a number of different committees. It appears as though the arrangement is that those who wanted to give testimony, it seems like they only get one bite at the apple, despite the fact that they may be in another committee giving testimony to that jurisdiction, but then they're barred from giving that a different testimony to address jurisdiction in this committee. I have an example of that. Former Senator Paul Anderson is now in the business of representing clients here in the legislature, and he was informed that his client was rejected from offering testimony in this committee today, and that individual was going to focus just on our jurisdiction. So I'm not quite sure how the testifying pattern is to develop, but the way you outlined it, does that mean that one testifier can only give testimony on one portion of the bill in the entire legislative process?
So, Senator Limmer, this committee did receive a lot of public testimony on the topics related to the Judiciary Committee's jurisdiction at our previous hearing on this bill. We spent a long time, as you recall, receiving that testimony. With regard to Senator former Senator Anderson's client or interest. My understanding is that that individual has already testified at 4 other committees in this process. So my conclusion is that input has been amply publicly noted. It is also well understood and was published on the information on this committee's website that anyone is welcome to submit written comments or testimony for the consideration of the committee. But we're not going to reopen the door to people who want to testify at every stop of this bill. We simply don't have time to do that. And if we open that up to one, I don't have a principled basis for shutting the door on everyone else that wants to reopen a lengthy conversation about the substance of this bill.
Mr. Chairman.
So with all due respect to my friend and former colleague, Senator Anderson, we're not going to be able to open the floor up for that testimony today.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Limmer.
Just a comment. The bill before us now is in its 8th engrossment. So it's changed considerably from the very first day it was heard. And I would imagine as it changes, well, in my opinion, we should give people their opportunity to react to the bill as it changes. And we also have maybe 8 to 10 new amendments that we're going to consider today. And so apparently, based on your judgment, Mr. Anderson's client will then be barred from giving any further testimony. Is that correct?
Senator Limmer, Mr. Anderson's client is welcome to submit written commentary or testimony to each one of us. If he does so electronically, and it's still available to do that, it will be distributed and to the members of the committee electronically and will be posted on the website. We can all consider that. Clearly, Senator Anderson has communicated the substance or something relating to the content to Senator Limmer already in this matter, as he's welcome, of course, to do. But I'm going to trust that all of the engrossments that have come between our first hearing and the bill coming back to us now, following other committee actions, have not encroached on the territory of the Judiciary Committee's jurisdiction. Or if they have, I'm not going to be happy about it. And I'd like to know about it because I have a few chairs then to talk to if that has happened in other committees. So presumably the provisions that are before the Judiciary Committee today have been unchanged since they left this committee by other committees with other jurisdiction. Of course, if there's overlapping jurisdiction, it's a different question. Sometimes the boundaries are a little hazy. But we only have the bandwidth for so much, and I'm trying to avoid duplicative testimony as we move forward. So at this point, we're going to turn to Senator Port for some opening comments. We do have some limited testimony we will receive, and then we'll go on to the amendments. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. I am pleased to be back here with you to present Senate File 73 again, the Adult Use Cannabis Legalization Bill. As you've heard from me before, prohibition of cannabis is a failed system that has not achieved the desired goals and has had incredible costs for our communities, especially for communities of color. We have an opportunity to undo some of the harm that has been done and create a system of regulation that works for Minnesota consumers and businesses while ensuring an opportunity in this new market for communities that have been most affected by prohibition. Our main goals are to legalize, regulate, and expunge, and we are working to ensure that this bill does just that. As you know, this bill is comprehensive, to say the least. Over the last 2 months since we first saw you in January, this bill has had 11 committee stops. Today marks number 12. We have accepted around 50 amendments, taken dozens of meetings with stakeholders of all varieties, listened, collaborated, and made this bill stronger. I'm grateful that through this process, we've worked together with each other and with stakeholders to get a final product that works best for Minnesotans. It's fitting that this bill started and ends its regular committee stops here in the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee, because we strongly believe there can be no legalization without expungement. The harm of incarceration has been borne primarily by communities of color, especially Black men, even though in study after study, Black people and white people use cannabis at similar rates. The disproportionate rates of arrest, prosecution, and incarceration in the Black community have had far-reaching effects on employment opportunities, housing, education, family stability, and wealth building, to name just a few. We have a responsibility to right this wrong by expunging all records for crimes that would now be legal under this new bill. Senator Oumou Verbeten and I are committed to ensuring this piece is the central tenet of this bill, and want to thank the Department of Corrections and the BCA for their work in helping us get this language correct. Finally, I want to thank my co-authors, especially Senator Oumou Verbeten and Senator Murphy, Senate Counsel, Courtney Schaaf, and Jackie Clinton. This bill is a team effort for sure. There are some testifiers, and I do have some amendments, Mr. Chair, and then I'm happy to stand for questions.
Before we do that, Senator Port, I'm going to ask counsel to address a point that I raised in my colloquy with Senator Limmer, that is provisions that have been acted upon by other committees along the path that do have at least an ancillary role with regard to judiciary's jurisdiction, so that we have the proper foundation for our consideration here today. Mr. Backus.
Mr. Chair, members, and I've consulted with Ms. Primo as well. I mean, I think there are probably two provisions I would alert the committee to, just so you know it's either different or additions. One is, I believe this was added in the Transportation Committee, Article 4, Section 18. There's a new open package provision. So it's modeled on the open bottle provision for DWIs. Basically, it provides a misdemeanor penalty for anyone who uses cannabis in a motor vehicle or who has cannabis in an open package or that's not properly packaged. So again, that's very similar to the open bottle law for DWI, but that's Article 4, Section 18. So that's new to our committee and somewhat in our jurisdiction. And the only other thing I would mention is Article 1, Section 9, which is the essentially the authorized use of cannabis under the bill. There's a new clause that was put in that prohibits a person from vaporizing or smoking flower, cannabis flower, et cetera, in a location where a minor might inhale it. Beyond that, I would say almost all the other changes, as far as I could see, are not really directly in our jurisdiction at all.
Thank you, Mr. Backus. Now, Senator Port, my intention then is to hear the testimony from the three people that are prepared to testify today. We'll invite Dana Gotts forward to start. And while Ms. Gotts is coming forward, if David Bernstein also wants to come forward and take the other vacant seat at the testifier table. Ms. Gotts, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Dana Gotts with the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension.
Sorry, I mispronounced your name again.
No problem. And we did work with Senator Port on some technical changes for the BCA's implementation portions of the expungement provisions. And so I'm really here today just to offer any assistance on questions that the committee may have on the expungement provisions or the A119 amendment.
So thank you. When we get to that amendment, it's good to know that you're here to assist with it. Thank you. Mr. Bernstein, go ahead and introduce yourself, your affiliation, and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Latz. Members of the committee, my name is David Bernstein, and I'm the chair of Minnesota's DWI Task Force. I had the opportunity to meet with Senator Port, I believe in late January, and discuss some proposals on behalf of the DWI Task Force to address highway safety. To date, one of those many proposals have been incorporated into the bill. Many have not. So the DWI Task Force does remain concerned about highway safety not being addressed in this bill. It has been addressed in the House bill, and I'm told there will be continued discussions, perhaps in a conference committee, to consolidate the two bills. So it sounds like this is very much a discussion in progress, but as the bill stands before you today, the task force believes there's a lot of work still to be done to address highway safety. I do have comments I can make at the appropriate time regarding a couple of amendments as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. And if you could, at some point here, identify what specific provisions you feel are not in the bill that the task force believes need to be in the bill to address highway safety. I know there has been extensive discussion relating among the legislative folks about whether some of the proposals from the task force were statutory clarifications or recodifications that didn't necessarily directly affect the substance of the law or highway safety. I'm not saying necessarily all of the task force's proposals were of that nature, but some of them, in my judgment, were and wouldn't have the detrimental effect on highway safety. So I'd like to know at some point what specific items are still an outstanding concern, and of course, like all bills, and especially those that are as complex as this one. The other body has its process, we have ours, and there will be a conference committee, and discussions are ongoing in these bills until there's a final conference committee report. So that's just the normal nature of the legislative process, and of course, we welcome your participation in that process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. And then our next testifier will be Matt Ayling from Mincoji. If you want to come forward, Mr. Ayling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senator Port, and members. Matt Ayling, Minnesota Coalition on Government Information. Our testimony is going to focus on the A114 amendment, which focuses on data practices issues. To begin with, we'd like to thank Senator Port for working on the changes reflected in that amendment. And we'd like to thank Senator Limmer, too, who was an early advocate for some of those changes. I would note that these changes have been also worked on by a group including the Minnesota Newspapers Association, Minnesota Broadcasters Association, and Mr. Neumeister as well. In terms of content, the A114 amendment would carry over changes that were previously adopted in the House and which exist in the most current House engrossment. From a technical standpoint, I did want to point out one very important change made in the House, which is also reflected here in the amendment language. And it's important to know, I think, in the cannabis bills as introduced, there was initially a not public classification assigned to inactive investigative data. And that classification was removed in the House, and it also is no longer present in the A114 amendment language, meaning that on balance, inactive investigative data is public. We believe this is very consequential, as the public availability of inactive investigative data in other areas of law, such as the law enforcement and civil investigative contexts, really ensures that the public is able to see how these important governmental investigative processes work once an active investigation is complete. And for the record, we'd also like to note that we believe that the public classification of this data does not become entangled with the not public classification for certain disciplinary data referenced on line 1.15. As if you look through the bill, the investigative process and the disciplinary or corrective process or processes that are described in the bill, they are discrete and they create their own data streams. And we had looked at possibly adding some corrective or clarification language, but we believe that the way the bill functions in having discrete processes for investigation and discrete processes for corrective action and discipline would keep those data streams separate and the classification separate. So once again, thank you, Senator Port, and I'm available to take questions on the other data pieces if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ayling, and to all the individuals working with Mincoji for your scrutiny and work on this and other legislative proposals. It's valuable assistance to this committee, so thank you. I will note that we do have available online, in case there are questions that can be addressed, representatives from the Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association and the Minnesota Sheriff's Association as well. So I think we are ready to start amending or considering amendments to the bill. And we're going to get some guidance from staff, I believe, as to what amendment we're going to take up first. I understand there's sort of a base amendment, and then other amendments kind of work off of that, so
That's correct,
what's our first
Mr.
step,
Chair.
Senator Port?
I believe the A119 is the first step.
Okay, so, members, you should have the A119 amendment in your packet. And we now have the A119 amendment before us. Senator Port.
Thank you,
would like to
Mr.
describe
Chair.
your amendment, please?
This is the required language from the BCA and FBI for the background checks and expungement in order to ensure compliance with the compact.
What compact are you referring to?
This is an interstate compact with the FBI. Perhaps Ms. Goetz wants to come back up and talk about this part. They worked with us. We're in a compact with a number of states to work with the FBI to ensure the compliance and background checks. And I can pass it off to my expert here to talk about the language.
Ms. Goetz.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Dana Goetz again with the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. So that is the National Privacy or Crime Prevention and Privacy Compact Council, a compact that the Minnesota is part of with many other states that, as Senator Port described, oversees background check compliance.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Goetz. Anything else in laying the foundation for the A119 amendment, Senator Port?
This is just, I want to thank the BCA and the Minnesota Justice Information Services for making sure that we get this right. If we don't get this piece right, it can sort of stall the process because the FBI has to approve background language statutes, background check statutes, the language on them. And so we wanted to make sure that we are in compliance with what our state requires.
Any questions or discussion from members of the committee on the A119 amendment? Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'd like to have a little bit more explanation of what this amendment is. We talked about FBI compact information. As a background, we didn't talk about the bill explicitly. Could you maybe explain the expungement part of this amendment?
Ms. Goetz, would you like to walk us through the amendment?
Sure. So it really is just making technical changes in like terminology to make sure that the BCA can implement the language as intended by the authors.
Ms. Goetz, do you have the amendment in front of you?
Yes.
Maybe you can just take us section by section of the amendment and tell us specifically what it does, please.
Okay. So the first, starting on line 1.2, that's the background check language that would make us in compliance with the background checks.
So it just changes some of the terminology to make sure that the language is consistent for use in the background checks?
Yes, any state statute that approves background checks has to be approved by the FBI, and the FBI has very particular standards, and so we need to make sure that the terminology is really precise.
All right, thank you. And how about starting on line 115? 1.15 on the amendment. What does that section do?
Okay, so then the first change is actually on 2.20, and that just says that we needed this change because it originally said that the expungement would be based on charges that were dismissed prior to determination of probable cause, but BCA does not have that information, so we had to change the language to what data the BCA collects.
Okay, thank you. And then how about the date changes starting on line 2.32?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Those date changes are in order for the BCA to have time to make the programmatic changes to the criminal history system to be able to implement the expungement provisions.
And is the BCA going to need a whole 2 years to do that? Or a year and a half, it looks like, is the change? Ms. Goetz?
Mr. Chair, yes, we anticipate needing approximately 12 to 18 months.
Mr. Chair, on that point,
Senator Limmer.
on that point, when would be the effective date of the bill if it passes? Oh, you don't even have to tell me that. I'm getting at a different question. Once the bill goes into effect, there'll be a gap in time between the effective date and this date. What happens with that information in between the time it's officially dismissed?
Ms. Goetz.
Mr. Chair, maybe Senate Counsel could assist with that question?
Mr. Backus.
Mr. Chair and Senator Limmer, these effective date changes in this provision only apply to the expungement article. So the expungement relief provided in it would not be applicable until the delayed date, but it doesn't change any of the earlier effective dates.
Thank you.
Ms. Goetz, could you proceed then on page 3 of the A119 amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So on line 3.1, where it says to delete an order of the BCA doesn't actually grant expungements, and so that was just a technical change that we implement the expungement relief granted by the courts or statute. Again, on 3.2, that's a reference to that we don't have prior to determination of probable cause information. Starting on line 3.5, that is just to reference that BCA does not collect data on all petty misdemeanors or all misdemeanors. We only collect data on records that have fingerprints associated with them. So we would only be expunging the records that the Bureau has in our possession. And then moving on to 3.13, that is just
Could you
saying.
back up a second? Line 3.10 and 3.11, there are a number of deletions. Are those relating to your previous comment?
Yes, they are, sir.
3.13, please.
So 3.13 just makes it clear that the BCA, the prior language ordered the BCA to notify individuals of expungements, but BCA doesn't collect any contact information on individuals. So this would just change that we will notify like law enforcement, local law enforcement agencies and other entities that we know of that have those records as well, so that they can be sealed at the local level. And I believe that is it. Again, on 4.12, it goes back to some of the same changes that were made previously, just in different sections about the effective date and changing some terminology on 4.13 from case to court file.
Are there any further questions relating to the A119 amendment?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Limmer.
Just a quick question. In the process of granting expungement relief, if there is a previous criminal history that the criminal history point was added from a previous conviction, how is that handled in the expungement relief? Or is it not handled at all?
Ms. Goetz.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, I'll try. When one is sentenced for a crime, the judge will consider not only the offense currently before it, but when it's establishing the sentence, it'll go back to the history of that individual to see if they have a criminal history that would add to a potential severity of the crime, or I mean, severity of the sentence. Does that have any bearing on the expungement, and is it a complication that we haven't anticipated?
Ms. Goetz, if you know.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't know if Senate Council would have the answer to that.
Okay, I think Senate Council's taking a look at them right now. Mr. Backus.
Mr. Chair and Senator Limmer, I believe under the bill, you're correct in that in terms of a normal expungement, that would be the process, but that's not really the case under the bill. I think the bill contemplates that these past cannabis crimes, essentially, if they wouldn't be illegal anymore, then the offender's other history is somewhat irrelevant for the expungements under the bill.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the A119 amendment? Senator Oumou Verbeten.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move the amendment, but I also know we have two more amendments that amend this amendment. So I want to do that properly. That's going to be the A22 and the A122 and the A124. That will change language that's currently in the A119.
Okay, so we have the A119 amendment on the table, and Senator Oumou Verbeten would like then to offer the A122
A122
to the A119 amendment at this time. Members, the A122 amendment is in your packets. It was handed out by staff. Senator Oumou Verbeten, would you like to explain the A122 amendment, please? Or ask Senator Port or Ms. Goetz to explain it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask Ms. Goetz to weigh in.
Oh, actually, I'm told Mr. Backus, our counsel, could explain.
Okay.
Mr. Backus.
Mr. Chair and members, the A122 amendment, Senator Latz had noticed at one point in the process that the automatic expungement piece where the BCA is going to automatically expunge or seal records didn't really have notice to prosecutors and didn't really require prosecutors to seal any records that they might have. So this amendment simply brings that into the process.
Any discussion from members of the committee on the A122 amendment? Not seeing any. All those in favor of Senator Oumou Verbeten's motion to adopt the A122 amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Now Senator Oumou Verbeten moves the A124 amendment to the A119 amendment. Who's going to explain this one?
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to.
Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This is a language that we have been working on with civil rights attorneys and immigration attorneys. The first portion of it, lines 1.13 through really 1.19, go through immigration law and what immigration lawyers have told us is that sometimes people applying for the immigration process will need access to these expungement records. And so this ensures that a non-citizen who may need copies of their expungement records for immigration purposes can obtain them, and that information is provided to those people. And then the bottom part of the amendment is that if you receive expungement and that has been a prior barrier to you being able to purchase a firearm or have a firearm, that once you receive that expungement, your right to possess a firearm is restored.
this all can be added to the bill, and then, we can still do that. But I'll have to continue because I'll be doing other things in the next half of the day.
So Senator Port and Senator Oumou Verbeten, I've been having some discussion with council about some of the language specifically in the A124 amendment. Senate council is a bit concerned about some of the, it suggests there might be some tweaking helpful on the first half, and I identified a concern on the second portion about language indicating that they'd only get their right to firearms restored if they were otherwise not disqualified from possessing firearms on other statutes unrelated to what's being addressed in this expungement process. So what I'm going to suggest is that we hold off on the A124 amendment at this moment. We allow council to take a closer look at the language on it. And he's indicated procedurally we can return to it yet this morning. He'll just need a little bit of time as we're working our way through here to maybe tweak some of the language so it is a little more clear in that regard. Is that okay with you, Senator Port and Senator Oumou Verbeten?
Yes. Yes, Mr. Chair. I just, again, will note that it's amending the A119. So however we need to do that if we're going to move forward with the underlying A119 amendment as amended.
Yeah, we can address that procedurally at the right time. We can incorporate the language into the bill as amended once we get to that point. All right, so Senator Oumou Verbeten withdraws the A124 amendment. We are now on the A119 amendment as amended by the A122 amendment. Are there any other amendments right now to the A119 amendment? I believe there are none. All right, so we are on the A119 amendment as amended. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment as amended is adopted. Okay, members, next up is the A112 amendment that was in your packets as handed out. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Members, a big part of what we've been talking about through the course of this bill is our work in the bill in various ways to try to stamp out the illicit market. It is a thing that we have taken many lessons from other states in crafting this bill, and that we are still trying to find the right balance. But one of the suggestions that we've had repeatedly, and as we've talked to other states that this has been a factor, is the original portion of this bill allowed for 5 pounds of possession, and we are lowering that to 2 pounds, with the caveat that if you are home growing, we know that a single crop of the plants allowable for home grow can produce more than that, and so you are also allowed your home grow harvest. But this moves the regular possession allowance from 5 pounds down to 2 pounds and addresses it at the various places that it's named throughout the bill. This is an attempt for us to get at the idea that, if you have a significant amount of cannabis in your home, that this is potentially a sign of the illicit market. And I will just add, Mr. Chair, that we are trying to strike a balance between stamping out an illicit market that is providing an unsafe, unregulated product. We're trying to balance that with the fact that, you can have a whole wine cellar in your basement, and that is completely allowable because it's a legal substance. We don't expect that means you're selling bootleg wine, but this is, we're trying to strike that balance because we know there's a significant illicit market at this moment.
I'll explain what's going on. The amendments were originally drafted to the 7th engrossment. The 8th engrossment came in last night, and we believe there should be a different amendment number with the same content that's drafted with the page and line numbers to the 8th engrossment. So if you give us a moment, we're going to try to find it. Mr. Backus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. I think the fastest way to do this is to take the A112 and to just change the page and lines where things are being inserted. So on line 1.2, it would be page 28. So if you delete line 1.2 and you insert page 28, delete lines 25 and 26 and insert. On line 1.9, delete that and insert page 28, line 27, delete 4 and insert 5. The next line, you delete that, it'd be page 28, line 28, do the same thing. Line 11, it would be delete the page and line reference. It would be, instead of that, page 28, line 30. Then the next line would be page 29, line 5, make that other change. 1.13, the change should be on page 29 after line 12. Add this. Line 1.17, it would be page 181. Delete lines 8 and 9 and insert. And then line 1.23, it would be page 181, line 8, make the change. And the next one would be on line 1.24, page 181, line 11. All I'm doing here is updating where these changes are being made. There's no change to the substantive, anything substantive with the amendment.
So Senator Oumou Verbeten is going to offer the A112 amendment, and will incorporate those changes proposed by council in the amendment. Senator Port, you have a testifier, has appeared magically.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an expert in case we have questions.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions about the A112 amendment as amended? Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Help me understand, what does it take to, or the possessing, go to line 1.3. regarding possessing 2 pounds or less of adult-use cannabis flower. Is this perceived that one would buy the cannabis flower through a retail source, let's say, or would they grow it off of a plant in their home?
Senator Port.
Mr. Chair and Senator Limmer, either way, this is the portion that says they are legally allowed to possess 2 pounds of adult-use cannabis.
And, Mr. Chair, what does
Senator
it take to get 2 pounds of cannabis flower? I mean, can you equate that to how many plants are necessary to grow that over a specific period of time? I'm just trying to get a determination of how you get that.
Senator Limmer, I understand in the other body there was a testifier showed up with a package, a mass quantity of dried cannabis, and displayed it to the committee, and that might have been an easier way to visualize it here today. I don't know if we have any. Then there were questions raised about the provenance of the display.
Right.
So maybe Senator Port can give us a verbal description that can paint a picture in our minds, and then we won't have any other questions for her about where that verbal description came from.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Chair and Senator Limmer. I think we have a different decorum level over here in this body.
Hope so.
I will.
Senator Kroon is learning about that, too, as we know, as a new member with a fresh eye on legislation.
I will please introduce and defer to my expert on that one, because I unfortunately, Senator Limmer, do not know.
Senator Limmer, or my
Go ahead.
apologies, my name's Layli Fadahi. I'm the campaign manager for MN is Ready. We represent a diverse range of cannabis policy stakeholders. Senator Limmer, the calculation, the number that I recall is that 4 mature flowering plants on the high end would produce about 5 pounds. So, you know, that would be the math for getting it down to 1, but I imagine that would be for a very proficient gardener.
All right. One
Senator
other
Lemmer.
question, thank you. Going on down to line 118, trying to get a comparison, more than 2 pounds, but not more than 10 kilograms. What would a kilogram be equal to in standard measurements? I have no idea what 10 kilos looks or weighs like.
Senator Port.
Thank you, Senator Latz and Senator Limmer. We just looked it up. It's 22 pounds.
Does that mean that
Senator
an
Lemmer.
individual in the context of the amendment, one can possess 2 to 22 pounds? Or give me a context of what that means.
Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Limmer. This portion is referring to, this previously would have been 5 pounds, and now it's 2 pounds. We are lowering the allowable limit, so this gets into one of the penalty sections, so from 2 pounds to 22 pounds, and then it puts in the relevant penalty.
So, Mr. Chair, if you were in possession of that amount of cannabis
I'm
flower.
not sure I like the way you said that. You said, Mr. Chair, if you were in possession of. Could you rephrase your question, Senator Limmer?
Well, I think the question would be appropriate in a hypothetical, wouldn't you think?
After this committee hearing, it might be necessary, Senator Limmer.
Again, the poundage in kilos that I'm referring to would qualify for a criminal penalty. And what would that criminal penalty be in your bill? And then if it was in excess of 10 kilos, what would that be?
Senator Port.
Thank you. I think council made me a graph for this. I'm looking for that portion. Mr. Chair.
Senator Port.
Thank you. And Senator Limmer, and I believe this might be in your packets, but for more than 2 pounds and up to 10 kilograms of flour is a new offense of first-degree possession of cannabis. It's a 5-year penalty, 5-year felony. Excuse me.
And that was
Senator
within
Limmer.
that range? And then if
That's
it was
correct.
in excess of that amount, what would be the penalty?
A 20-year felony.
20 years, all right. Thank you.
So I have a drafting question. I'm just going to say it for the record because it irks me. But we've got 2 different systems of weights and measures. Here we're using pounds and we're using kilograms. We should have converted the entire country to the metric system back in the 70s when President Carter first proposed it.
Roll call.
Boy, if we had the authority to pass that, Senator Limmer, I would have brought it before the committee in January. But I'm sure it's cost our economy trillions of dollars in having to, for international trade conformity purposes. But clearly there's a disjunction in our state statutes in the way these things are measured too. And maybe that'll be my reelection bill. For next year, we'll fix state statute on that. For now, I guess this is the way our existing statutes are structured, and we'll just have to live with it. But it just doesn't make any sense to be making direct comparisons in the same language, even between pounds and kilograms. But another topic for another day. Any other discussion or questions relating to the A12 amendment? Senator Limmer.
Mr. Chairman, since we already have been told what the equivalent of 10 kilograms are, would you want to make that change now to pounds?
Senator Limmer, I've been told by counsel that the threshold of kilograms is used in other places in the bill, and it'd be pretty unwieldy to try to fix that here.
All right. You wouldn't want to change the 2 pounds to kilograms?
Well, there's a whole nother discussion.
Never mind.
I think if we can find a way to conform that, maybe we'll let finance fix it there. I will waive judiciary jurisdiction if it comes up, as long as it's an equivalent change in weight. All right, any other discussions on the A12 amendment? Not seeing any. Senator Oumou Verbeten moves the adoption of the A112 amendment as amended with council's page and line references for the 8th engrossment of the bill. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment as amended is adopted. Members, we're going to go back to the A124 amendment, and Mr. Backus can explain how he proposes to approach it.
Mr. Chair, members, so we have with the A124 on line 1.21, delete receiving and insert who is prohibited from possessing a firearm or ammunition based on a prior adjudication or conviction for a cannabis-related offense and who receives. And then on line 1.22, after restored, insert if the person is otherwise eligible to possess the item. I'll read the entire sentence then. It would read, any person who is prohibited from possessing a firearm or ammunition based on a prior adjudication or conviction for a cannabis-related offense and who receives an expungement or other relief under section 609A.05 or 609A.06 shall have their right to possess firearms and ammunition restored if the person is otherwise eligible to possess the item.
And then, Mr. Backus, you had expressed some concern about the way in which the earlier portion of the amendment has been written. How do you propose to address that?
Mr. Chair, at this point, I wouldn't propose any changes to that, perhaps with the caveat that when it gets into finance, It's really, it might just be a question of moving the language. I'm not sure if it's appropriately placed at this point. It wouldn't be really a substantive change, though. So, and disregard my initials on the top of the amendment. This is all my fault, I suppose.
So, members, we now have then before us the A124 amendment. Senator Oumou Verbeten will be moving it. Senator Oumou Verbeten, do you adopt Mr. Backus's recommended language into lines 1.21 and 1.22 in your motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Is there any further, and I'll, for the record, if there's a recodification proposed later for the earlier portion of the amendment, Mr. Backus's or council's recommendation that it should be placed in a different location somewhere in the bill or statute, I will waive judiciary jurisdiction for purposes of fixing that in finance or whatever other committee this goes before after judiciary. So to the A124 amendment as amended, any further discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment as amended is adopted. Members, the A114 amendment is next. This is the amendment that Mr. Ealing testified to on behalf of Min Koji. Senator Limmer moves the A114 amendment. Is there any discussion from members of the committee regarding the A114 amendment? Any questions for Mr. Ealing? Senator Port, any comments on this amendment?
Just want to really say thank you to Min Koji for working with us, for the broadcasters, Mr. Neumeister. It's been very helpful to have them take a deep look at all the data practices in this bill, and I'm very supportive of this amendment.
Senator Limmer moves adoption of the A114 amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Members, the next amendment is the A106 amendment. We're going to take a moment so council can catch up with their paperwork and verify we're working off the correct page and line numbers. Council is rapid on this. The A106 amendment is good to go. Senator Oumou Verbeten will offer the A106 amendment. Who would like to describe it? Senator Port.
Mr. Chair, I wonder if perhaps I could ask you to describe this, because this is one we worked very closely with you and your office on, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into this.
Thank you, Senator Port. I'd be happy to. One of my concerns was about this bill. A very significant concern of mine was about the impact of secondhand smoke. I come to this having worked with for a lot of years on the issues relating to cigarette secondhand smoke and amending the Clean Indoor Air Act relating to smoking in restaurants and bars and so on. The bill as originally drafted, in my judgment, had a gap with regard to the ability of those who are affected by secondhand smoke of cannabis particularly in multifamily or housing arrangements, to be able to protect their own interests in connection with it, and in part because there's something about cannabis smoke that is somehow particularly spreads more easily, perhaps, I guess is one way to say it. Even if an individual is using in their own private space, it seems to be able to get out into the hallways and into other private units and so on. So my proposal here is to give individuals that are affected in that way the ability to bring a nuisance claim against others to protect their own interests in enjoyment and, frankly, in some cases, perhaps their own safety relating to secondhand smoke. So this would give an individual who is described in the bill who feels that they find that the secondhand smoke is injurious to their health, indecent or offensive to their senses, or obstructing their free use of the property so as to interfere with the comfortable enjoyment of life or liberty, to bring a civil claim against another person that is causing that nuisance, or against a landlord who's failing to enforce the terms of a lease or governing document, or against a homeowners association as well that is failing to enforce their own terms relating to use of cannabis, flower, smoking of cannabis within their the building under the HOA's management. So it does provide for civil penalty against a person in the amount of $250, or if their actual damages are greater than the amount of the actual damages, and against the landlord or homeowners association, penalty up to $500 or the amount of their actual damages if that's greater. So I will ask for the committee's support for the A106 amendment. Senator Port to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This is something we worked with closely with Senator Latz. I appreciate your work, not just on this, but on the Indoor Clean Air Act in general, and I support a green vote.
Mr. Hines, you indicated, I think, an interest in offering some very, very brief comments on this proposed amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Patrick Hines with Messerly Kramer, here on behalf of the Community Associations Institute, which represents the interests of homeowner associations in Minnesota. Thank you for allowing me very brief testimony. I wasn't aware that the amendment was up until after the hearing started. CAI would have concerns with the approach taken here by allowing a cause of action against a homeowners association for failing to enforce provisions related to cannabis. Under the way I read the language, if a neighbor complained to their board about secondhand smoke from cannabis plant, and the board investigated and perhaps told the first neighbor, gave them a warning, if the complainant didn't think that was enough, they would have a cause of action against the homeowner association for not enforcing the rules. I don't think that's, in our opinion, probably the right way to go. We'd be happy to discuss this further and work with Senator Latz, Senator Ports, and committee members on it. I just wanted to put that on the record. We would have concerns with that approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. And I haven't figured out a different entity to hold accountable for their own rules and regulations in a building. So, Senator Limmer.
Just a quick question.
Mr. Hines, come on back. Senator Limmer.
Mr. Hines, you represent, what, homeowner associations?
Mr. Hines.
Mr. Chair,
Multifamily?
Senator Limber, that's correct, yes.
Okay.
Senator Limmer.
Just for the record, did you give any testimony in any other committee regarding this bill?
Mr. Chair, Senator Limber,
Mr. Hines.
I have not. My testimony is only limited to this A-106 amendment.
Okay,
I don't
just
think it was
checking,
another committee.
Mr. Hines, thank you.
Noted for the record, Senator Limmer. Mr. Cruin, or Senator Cruin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I share your concern over the nuisance aspect of this. That's one thing that I've been thinking about a lot. But I'm also, when you look at the actions in the civil penalties, for the person who's actually creating the nuisance versus the landlord, it's actually more for the landlord than it is the person that's actually creating the nuisance. And I'm wondering if that's upside down. It seems to me the person who's actually creating the nuisance should be subject to a greater civil penalty than the landlord for failing to enforce the terms of the lease.
Senator Cruin, my logic there was a landlord probably has more resources and therefore would need a little higher penalty for the impact to be effective here. Seems to me a landlord could very easily put in their lease that if their tenant causes any liability under this provision, the tenant is financially responsible to the landlord for it, for any landlord's damages that they have to pay. So there'd be a method for recouping that, presumably. But if you got a landlord or you've got a homeowners association that has hundreds of thousands of dollars or has more resources than many tenants would have, to have any bite, there would have to be a little higher penalty for them, and that was the logic behind that disparity. Senator Cruin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that response. Perhaps, I'm not sure if you'd be open to making the civil penalty equal at $500 for both, because it seems to take $250 for the person actually creating the nuisance might be a little bit on the low end.
Senator Cruin, I guess it's kind of a judgment call. I kind of landed on $250. It just seemed to me maybe $500 was a little harsh for a person who might be paying $1,500 a month in rent or less. So my guess is if they're depending, look, if they're in a unit where they're paying $3,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment or a condo, it might not be a problem. But if they're in affordable housing, my guess is $250 would be enough to get their attention, and $500 would be overboard. But it's a judgment call here, Senator Cruin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I get the intent behind the holding the landlord accountable, but I'm not sure. I'm wondering if it's going to be, if it's that black and white. There's going to be, I imagine, and maybe this is a question, sorry, I forgot your name, but Mr. Hines, if, imagine this is an issue right now with cannabis, particularly cigarettes, I would imagine as well. How does this typically work now? And are there problems with determining who is the culprit in any other issues like that, if you care to comment?
Mr. Hines.
Mr. Chair and Senator Cruin, thank you for the question. I would, currently, I think one of the differences between homeowner associations and perhaps the landlord is, one, it's a nonprofit company, it's a nonprofit corporation made up entirely of the owners and therefore your neighbors. So in terms of resources, all of the operating budget from a homeowners association comes only from the residents. There's no profit-making arm of an HOA. Many HOAs are self-managed, and they could be a very small unit. It could be even four units that make up an HOA, which means, you know, one resident trying to enforce against another, which can be tricky. But I would say to your question, if there's the bylaws or the declaration says there's no smoking, for instance, or you can't use, no smoking, then that would be enforced through the bylaws and declarations, and that power comes from the Common Interest Ownership Act and statute. I would also note, under the Common Interest Ownership Act, there are provisions that would allow residents to, essentially try to force the board to enforce the provisions. The board's required to enforce the bylaws and regulations. So I think if someone were in a homeowner association under current law, they probably could raise the issue and try to make the board enforce it. That's sort of the nature of how it works. My concern with this language is that, like I said, as an example, if you tried to figure out who the neighbor was who was smoking and you couldn't, or you did and you said, we'll give you one chance, knock it off, if the other neighbor didn't like that, they could bring an action saying you didn't enforce the rules. It really eliminates, at least the potential for discretion on behalf of a board.
Of course, Mr. Hines, the HOA could put in their enforcement procedures that there's a one-time warning and then there is a penalty if they chose to do so. And part of the reason I'm doing this is because getting an HOA or to actually take steps to enforce anything can be very, very difficult. And so sometimes they'll simply throw up their hands and say, we can't do anything, or they simply decide not to do anything. And I think there needs to be some bite, some consequence to their looking the other way. Especially when HOAs often are controlled by one individual or the very few individuals that decide to get involved in the running of the operation of the building that they're in. And especially the case if there are a lot of absentee owners in buildings, that they don't care so much, they're not around, they don't pay any attention, and the HOA gets controlled by just one or two individuals. So that was my logic behind putting some financial consequences as an incentive for the HOA to take action when there are complaints. Any further discussion on the A106? Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I haven't fully thought this through, so my apologies in advance but is this consistent with existing landlord-tenant law? Can we just put this in this without changing anything? I'm assuming maybe we can. I'm just wondering if you've given thought to that, if it contradicts anything else in landlord-tenant law.
I simply asked council to draft an amendment to this effect, so we're going to ask council to answer your question, Senator Kroon. Ms. Primo.
Mr. Chair and members, I'm not aware that it conflicts with landlord-tenant law. The specific language on nuisance comes from our current law on nuisance, so it mirrors those standards.
Senator Kroon.
Mr. Question, thank you, Mr. Chair. Same question for the Minnesota Common Interest Ownership Act. Anything in there that we would need to be concerned about?
Ms. Primo.
Mr. Chair and members, I'm not aware of anything in 515B that conflicts with this. As Mr. Hines described, there are sort of administrative processes for someone to advocate for themselves, but those don't conflict with the civil cause of action that would be provided here.
Any further discussion on the A106? Senator Oumou Verbeten moves adoption of the A106 amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Members, will take up the A115 amendment next. Yeah, we're going to have Mr. Backus explain the A115 amendment. Is that okay, Senator Port?
Sure.
Mr. Backus.
Mr. Chair, members, the A115 amendment attempts to essentially correct current law and also law under the bill if it became law regarding DWIs and whether a person who is impaired and driving because they essentially are taking legal cannabis, i.e. hemp-based cannabis under current law, the edibles and beverages you can currently legally buy, that is not, that's technically not a controlled substance under current law. It may be an intoxicating substance, but it's not a controlled substance based on how law is defined. The operative language here is on line 2.2 to 2.7. It simply amends the definition of controlled substance that's applicable in the DWI law to clarify essentially that it includes legal hemp, and then all the other provisions are conforming changes relating to adding that in the various impaired driving laws.
Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This is one of the recommendations from the DWI task force was to include this portion of law that was legalized last year to make sure that it's still fit under intoxicating substances, even though it's not a controlled substance. So I would appreciate your support for this. I think it moves us closer to what our folks on keeping track of traffic safety are telling us they need.
Thank you, Senator Port. Are there any other questions about the A115 amendment? Senator Westland moves the A115 amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The amendment's adopted.
Members will now take up the A117 amendment. Members, the A117 amendment is a technical amendment brought to us by the Department of Corrections. Senator Port to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Yes, that's exactly correct. This is a technical amendment from the Department of Corrections to ensure that they can maintain current practices around cannabis use for individuals on parole, supervised release, or conditional release. This is to ensure that simply being on supervised release or conditional release cannot be the reason to prohibit someone from being able to be on the medical cannabis program. And so this is current practice and just a technical update from Department of Corrections to ensure that that stays true moving forward.
Is there any discussion or are there any questions relating to the A117 amendment? Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Port, this raises another question, and that is an individual might be on parole, probation. If this law passes, can that individual, is there any restriction from that person using recreational marijuana during their probation?
Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Latz. There are provisions that in this bill that allow for that to be a condition of release, depending on the conviction, the supervised release, based on the decisions that the court would make through that. There are provisions to allow for that. It cannot be used to ban someone from the medical cannabis program that they may apply for as the only reason. If there is another legitimate reason to do so, that would be allowable, but just simply being on parole cannot be the reason you're banned from it.
And if this law passes, can an inmate in a prison use recreational marijuana? Let's say even outside in an activity yard?
Senator Port.
Mr. Chair and Senator Limmer, no.
All right, thank you.
Any further discussion on the A117 amendment? Senator Oumou Verbeten moves adoption of the A117 amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Mr. Backus wanted to clarify some remarks that he made earlier. Mr. Backus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is in response to Senator Limmer's question earlier about the expungement provisions of the bill. The answer should have been a little bit more nuanced than that. I think there are two expungement provisions in Article 5. There's the automatic expungement that the BCA will grant. For that, and those are very low-level offenses, past conduct, et cetera, wouldn't be relevant, past criminal history. There's another expungement provision where the board of expungement, a 5-member board, would essentially review cases for higher-level cannabis offenses. For that, even though past criminal history isn't specifically mentioned, it is implied. They can consider that if they wanted to. They would consider statements from victims and law enforcement. They would consider aggravating or mitigating factors relating to the underlying offense. They would consider the risk the person posed to the community or other individuals, the nature and severity of the underlying crime, and they would not be eligible for the expungement into that context if the offense involved a dangerous weapon or the intentional infliction of bodily harm, things like that. So I think I just wanted to put that on the record, that it is a little more nuanced than I think I led you to believe earlier.
Members, the next amendment we'll take up is the A120 amendment. Mr. Backus is going to describe the A120 amendment.
Mr. Chair, members, I didn't personally draft this amendment. This came from other staff in our office. This is a cleanup amendment for the big amendment that was adopted in state and local government that replaced Article 1 with a revised Article 1. So these are corrections that essentially weren't included in that original amendment that probably would have been if there was a little more time to prepare it. And then if it's okay with members and Senator Port, I'd like to, Ms. Priya and I would like to suggest one other change. This isn't related to what happened in state government, but it would change something that we believe to be an error in another part of the bill. It would be page 31, line 8, delete or cannabis products. This relates to the Office of Cannabis Management, where they can impose civil fines on people for essentially illegal sales of cannabis. There are, if I remember, I don't have it in front of me, but there are like 3 or 4 different paragraphs. This one paragraph, it says cannabis flower or cannabis products, and I don't believe it should include cannabis products there because they're included in the other paragraphs.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Backus. I think that's absolutely correct in that point. That particular set of provisions underneath that is particular to cannabis flowers, so that would be. I would ask for that to be included in this cleanup amendment as well.
Okay. So, Mr. Backus, could you just restate your oral amendment to the A120 amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to put it in the proper place in the A120 amendment, but we would include in the A120 amendment an amendment to the bill. It would be page 31, line 8, delete or cannabis products.
So Senator Oumou Verbeten is going to offer the A120 amendment. Senator Oumou Verbeten, do you adopt into your amendment the language that Mr. Backus just described?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Is there any discussion from members on the A120 amendment? Not seeing any. Senator Oumou Verbeten moves adoption of the A120 amendment as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Are there any other amendments to the bill, members? Senator Limmer.
Mr. Chair, I see the A116 amendment. Did we consider that? Not that I'm interested in necessarily advancing it, because I don't know what it's about. But
Yeah, Senator Limmer, that was an amendment that had originally been drafted to the 7th engrossment and was replaced by one of the amendments we already adopted.
all right. Thank you.
So, members, we are now on Senate File 73 as amended. Is there any further discussion on the Senate File 73? Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's still page 137 will be where I'm asking about. It has to do with the grants contained in this bill. And we've been talking about grant recipients in previous bills today. And thought I'd first make a comment about how an eligible organization in line 137.8 through 137.11, I think does make an attempt to define it better than some other bills, and I appreciate that. But I do have a question about what community groups means within that definition, 137.10 through 137.11.
Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I don't know that there's a particular definition for it, but I think, we have talked a lot about, through the course of this bill, about ensuring that we keep this as local as possible. We really are trying very hard with this bill to ensure that there's an opportunity for Minnesotans to get into this industry, and we're hoping to get away from sort of waving a flag of saying, please come into our states. Other major growers and providers who have sort of built up huge things. So our intent in this is to really keep it local. I think community groups could be, anything from the nonprofits here, but also if there are, groups organized through churches or through neighborhoods, that it would be potentially allowable through that, as long as they meet the other required criteria.
So, Senator Kroon, I'm going to allow some limited discussion on this point, but since this is relating to the Office of Cannabis Management, which is outside the jurisdiction of the Judiciary Committee, we're not going to have an extended conversation on the topic. But go ahead, Senator Kroon, briefly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. I thought it might be relevant insofar as it's been a discussion throughout the day, and I think it's an extension of that.
That's why I'm allowing a limited conversation.
Right, and I'm not sure it has been discussed in any other committee. It has not, as far as I know, but I could be wrong about that. And I think this does warrant a discussion of some sort before it makes its way into law about what exactly we're talking about here as public stewards of our tax dollars. And I understand the intent to keep it local. I know that's a common thread throughout the bill. But also when we're talking recipients of grants, it seems for my level of comfort, we would need to tighten that up more to prevent kind of any sort of waste, fraud, and abuse situations that might be going on or could go on or that have gone on in other areas. And I guess this is an extension, too, of a previous conversation where we need, in my view, need to do a better job at defining entities that are going to be receiving grants from the taxpayers for any particular purpose. And I'll just leave it at that, Mr. Chair, given that this isn't within our jurisdiction. I appreciate the latitude.
Thank you, Senator Kroon. Is there any further discussion on Senate File 73?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Limmer.
Mr. Chair, on your testifier list, you had representatives listed from the Chiefs of Police and the Sheriff's Association. Did we ever get to those individuals?
Senator Limmer, they have indicated they were available remotely, or I see one physically present to answer questions relating to the bill. Did you have a question, Senator Limmer, for
Yes, I do.
anyone in particular?
Yes, I do.
Who would you like to direct your question to?
Mr. Potts, Chief Potts, Director Potts.
Director Potts, come on forward.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Senator Port.
Just to Senator Kroon's last point before we move on to a new topic of discussion, we did talk in depth about the grant programs in both agriculture and jobs. So those got very large vettings in those two committees.
Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Potts, what is the position of the Chiefs of Police Association in Minnesota regarding this legislation?
Director Potts, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Mr. Chair, my name is Jeff Potts. I'm the Executive Director for the Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association. And Mr. Chair, Senator Limmer, I think the Chiefs of Police Association is concerned. We've brought some concerns forward. Our position on the bill is to monitor it very closely, and obviously our goal is to try, if this becomes law, to do it here in Minnesota in as safe a way as possible, learning as much as we can from other states who have legalized cannabis, which we've talked to and listened to. And if this does proceed here, our hope is that we can do it from a public safety standpoint as safe as possible.
And
Senator Limmer.
Director Potts, what difficulties do you perceive if this turns into law for law enforcement?
Mr. Potts.
Mr. Chair, members, Senator Limmer, I think there's basically three areas of concern. One has been talked about a little bit here today, that is traffic safety. We have seen in other states with legalized cannabis anywhere from a 6 to 10% increase in crashes and fatalities. Here in Minnesota last year, we had 446 fatalities. We can expect that there will be more. Our hope is that there's some work done on a roadside tests, additional resources for drug recognition experts, and a few other areas related to traffic safety that I'll save you from going through all here today. We're concerned about the illicit market, and in doing this here in Minnesota, I think we've made some suggestions in the past with regard to the possession limits. We still are concerned about the possession limits and how that will impact the illicit market. The larger the possession limits are, probably the more robust the illicit market's going to be. And I think local law enforcement is going to be in the position to have to deal with and confront that illicit market more often than not. Third area is local control. We've made some suggestions with regard to local control. Again, we think that, particularly on the public safety side, law enforcement will be in a position to have to deal with a lot of the issues that come from this. And I think our position is that we think there could be more local control. We appreciate the differences from the bill and the other body, but we do, I guess, advocate strongly for revenue sharing with local governments to help offset the costs that are going to come with dealing with illicit markets and other issues regarding to recreational cannabis. Those are the three major areas, Senator Limmer.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Limmer.
Director Potts, with your experience in law enforcement, is there now the technology to measure intoxication of someone who has used marijuana and now is impaired?
Director Potts.
Mr. Chair, members, Senator Limmer, unfortunately, the roadside testing is not where it needs to be rolled out in Minnesota at this point. There's research, there's some beta projects and demos going on across the country, but unfortunately, we don't have a reliable roadside test right now that can be used to provide law enforcement with real good guidance on when someone is truly impaired at the level that they should not be driving a motor vehicle.
All right, thank you.
Director Potts, there is a pilot program for roadside testing, fluid testing here in the cannabis bill, as I'm sure you know. And there are still drug recognition evaluators that do standardized field sobriety tests that are specifically directed toward controlled substance use, right?
Mr. Chair, that's correct. The DRE program does exist. We believe that if this becomes law, there are not nearly enough at this particular point in time. And that test that you speak about is underway with regard to the roadside testing, but to my knowledge, it's not complete yet. It's not really ready for a rollout. We're appreciative that there's a pilot program there, but the fact is it's not ready yet.
Thank you, Director.
And Mr. Chair?
Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Director Potts. In previous discussions regarding this subject over the years, there was a concern by Minnesota law enforcement who used dogs for sniffing out and searching for illicit drugs. I believe they're trained to trigger on marijuana. How does that affect the use of those dogs, and what is the cost of training a dog to its full potential?
Director Potts.
Mr. Chair, Member Senator Limmer, there are a number of canines in use in Minnesota. A percentage of those are trained in narcotics detection, and many of them are trained in marijuana. Unfortunately, you cannot untrain that, and so those dogs that are trained in the detection of marijuana or cannabis would probably no longer be functional and would need to be replaced. The cost of a canine and the training, at least right now, is around $30,000 for the dog and the training to be done. So about $30,000 per canine. I can't give you an accurate number as to how many are trained on the marijuana. The vast majority are trained on narcotics detection, but those that are trained on marijuana would no longer be functional as narcotics tracking.
Thank you.
I'm just kind of thinking out loud on this, Director Potts, but there might be a question for courts to sort out a little bit. If there were a marijuana-trained canine that hit on a trunk, if there was some other reason to suspect that there might be more than some personal use quantities involved in a vehicle stop, for example, that might give probable cause to open up a trunk and see if there are bags and bags and bags of marijuana rather than the limited quantities allowed under the bill. I don't know off the top of my head, but if there are other signs of trafficking, for example, that's going on, as opposed to just some personal use, maybe there's some conversation to be had there.
I think, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'll just respond real quick. I think that the direction, though, that they would move is that the dogs would not be trained on marijuana any longer. Those that are still in service, I think you raise a good question, is whether or not it would create more issues than potentially, the officer in the department would want to deal with if those dogs are alerting on a newly legalized substance, delineating between personal use versus a trafficking amount or a distribution amount is, I think, going to be a very hard hard thing to distinguish for the dog.
I think you're right, Director Potts. Interesting intellectual question anyway. All right. Thank you. Any further questions? Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not fully up to speed on all the terms here, so if I get this a little bit off, to forgive me. But regarding the pilot program to measure for levels of impairment, obviously that is important work regardless of whether or not marijuana is legalized, because it's occurring now as well. But I do think it'll occur more often if it's legalized. Particularly, it seems like I believe it's still in there that this isn't just off sale, it's on sale, or whatever the terminology is. It's specific licenses to allow for the consumption of cannabis on site. And so I met with the sheriff of my county in Anoka about a wide range of things, but this came up, and he gave me permission to attribute this to him. And he said, you know, how impaired is somebody who's had a joint and 2 beers? Can you answer that question? And assuming the answer is no, you can let me know. But and so with respect to this pilot program, but is there any work being done that combines, say, alcohol with marijuana, or are those 2 different silos and you're either impaired in one or the other? But there is, I guess I'm just wondering if there's any kind of work being done to kind of blend those together for an overall impairment.
Director Potts.
Mr. Chair, and members, that's a tough question. I think there is some research being done now to try to figure that out. This roadside test device, I think there's even a debate going on as to whether or not you can accurately measure in a standardized way what the right amount or concentration of THC is to trigger impairment in everyone. It depends on someone's body composition, how recently the substance was used, but there is also data that shows from other states that use of marijuana and alcohol can increase when there's legalized cannabis. And so now you're looking at really the importance of these drug recognition experts that are going to look at the driving conduct, those field sobriety tests that are done with a drug recognition expert to try to sort those 2 out. How much of this is associated with the use of cannabis or other narcotics or drugs? How much of it is associated with the use of alcohol? The DREs, I think, can figure that out. I'm not so sure, I guess I don't know for sure how reliable this roadside test is going to be in that specific area of looking at the different, the combination of alcohol and cannabis. I think it's more focused on the concentration of cannabis. Now you're going to also have to have DRE experts that are able to tie in how much of this is alcohol, how much of this is marijuana, and how much of the combination of the 2 creating a situation where the person is obviously impaired to drive a motor vehicle.
Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that answer. That's kind of what I'm getting at. And I do realize that this already is happening, and I know there's a common refrain, but I also have been given evidence to suggest that it will increase if we take this action. And I just worry whether we're getting out in front of this. I mean, this is really important work. It sounds like it's almost at its infancy stage in some respects. Even if we're closer to determining impairment level for THC, there's still more factors in the real world that we need to really understand to get to overall impairment, whether or not somebody should be driving a vehicle. And it sounds like we're not there yet, and we're not going to be there yet. It's concerning to me. But I appreciate the work you're doing and for the explanation, and hopefully we'll get there. Thanks.
Senator Limmer.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, may
Senator
I
Port.
speak to that point, or those points that were just made? I want to make a couple of comments, because we are taking seriously in this bill the effect on roadside safety, the effect on safety in our communities in general. And so I want to point a few things out. First, in the amendment today, and we appreciate the chiefs of police work with us on this, we did reduce the limit because we agree that trying to balance the right to have a legal substance in your house with the need to control the illicit market it's a fine line to balance. And we are trying to work towards that, which is why we reduced the limit today. To the revenue sharing piece with the local sort of local jurisdictions, we're still in conversation about that. It was part of the reason that we increased in state government last week the registration licensing fees, licensing renewal fees. Let me get the terminology right. Because that is sort of the way it works in liquor stores, and we made them much more much more similar to how that process works as an eye towards that, because we understand. And the most significant piece that the local jurisdictions were asking for that was to have dual registration or dual licensing, because they know that local jurisdictions will be doing enforcements, right? They'll be the ones who will be finding out if a dispensary is selling to underage minors, and they, previous to this, could file a complaint with the office, and then the office had to investigate in order to pull the license. Earlier this week, we put in dual registration, so the local jurisdictions have a registration that they can pull that would cease operation if they find those sort of infractions in regulations, because we agree those things can't wait for a state agency. They need to be handled at the local jurisdiction. So we've made significant steps there to try to help with that. To the point of safety on the roads, there is one piece that I think often gets left out of this conversation when we talk about potential increases with roadside fatalities and crashes, and that is what we've learned from other states. Most states have had increases in fatalities and roadside crashes. Not all states. And the big difference was the states that put in, even prior in the sort of period between when legislation passes and when the product is legal and on the streets, have put in significant public education. And that is education both from the state, but also, and this part has been critical in other states, peer-to-peer education for young people, much like we did with the non-smoking campaigns a decade and a half ago when we did Target Market. Peer-to-peer education that talks about the dangers of smoking cannabis for the first time or using cannabis for the first time, and the fact that cannabis does impair your driving were absolutely critical. And the two states that implemented really strong programs on that saw no statistical change in instances of fatalities and roadside crashes. And Senator Kroon, I'm happy to get you those studies. I don't have them with me right now, but I can get them to you. That is a piece that we put significant focus on in this bill because we believe it is critical. The last thing I want to say is the oral fluid pilot test has been in front of the Senate for, I think, 6 years. This is something that, you're right, isn't ready for the road because we haven't funded a pilot project for years and years and years. This bill has been in front of this body, and we haven't put the investment in to see if we can get something that works. So I agree, it's not going to be a working system right now because we haven't done the research, and as a state we haven't invested in doing the research to ensure that we can find out if we can even get to the point, because the chief is exactly right. Right now, alcohol is an outlier in controlled substances. It is the only substance that we know of that we can identify a blood alcohol content with a level of impairment, that they correlate, that they are connected. We don't know how to do that with cannabis. We also don't know how to do it with Ambien, with other controlled substances that people use and then drive impaired with. Alcohol is the outlier. It is not the norm. And so we have put significant money in this bill for DRE, drug recognition experts. We've put significant investment in this bill to understand that this is going to look different, but it's already happening right now. And what we can do is educate people on the dangers of driving while impaired, and we can put the money into figuring out if what I think are brilliant minds in Minnesota can help us figure out how to find an oral fluid test that works, as this bill says, not just for cannabis, but for controlled substances in general, because we sort of stopped working on this after breathalyzers. But the reality is there are many more controlled substances that can impair you, and we have no way to test for those with an oral fluid test at this point. So those would be my comments on that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Senator Limmer, any follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been told that the THC in marijuana is now anywhere from 10 to 40 times stronger than what it was 20 years ago. And THC, that's the element in marijuana that gives a user a high, is stored in the fat tissues of the body, and it's released very slowly. So it stays in your bloodstream for days, even weeks. So my question to Director Potts, being a former chief of police, if you had a police officer that would be using now a legal substance, let's say on a Sunday afternoon, and he needs to work the next day, he's going to be out in traffic. THC affects memory. It affects the reaction of the body. As a police chief, would you be concerned about one of your officers having ingested a potentially legal substance, but the substance still remains in the body for a period of days? Is that going to affect an officer's judgment or the effectiveness of doing the job, or reacting quickly to some kind of stimuli on the job?
Director Potts.
Mr. Chair, member Senator Limmer, I think that concern was really brought forward earlier in the year, or I guess it was last year, when the new law on edibles passed and forced public safety leaders to really address that issue. And I think most of them have stuck with the interpretation of the federal prohibition on police officers or individuals carrying a firearm, having a commercial driver's license, that they shall not use those substances because of the questions that you just raised and the fact that there's a federal prohibition on it. So I think the law enforcement community is very concerned about that, but at least currently is looking towards the federal law that bans it and directs their employees that they shall not use those substances because of the concerns you mentioned.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I have a question for Senator Port now. Senator Port, in the THC, do you recognize in your bill a level of THC that would be a limit to what could be offered as a product?
Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Limmer. We don't in the bill, but we do allow in an amendment that was accepted on Tuesday, the Office of Cannabis Management to regulate potency. So that is allowable under this. And to your last point, I will just say that there is ability for positions, jobs that have safety components, including law enforcement, firefighters, people who work in healthcare, people who work in childcare, things like that. Their employers can still ban the use, and they can require drug testing.
Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple comments. I will acknowledge the work that's been done. I think the bill has gotten better with respect to public safety. And I would be interested in those studies on those two states that didn't result in increased traffic accidents and fatalities. I would like to look at those if you please send them to me. And then, I agree that this work needs to be done regardless. I mean, there are people out driving that are impaired under multiple substances. And so we should be doing that work regardless of this bill. And I don't simply, I'm not really interested in past legislative action or inaction. I wasn't here. That part of it doesn't interest me. But I guess what I'm thinking about is it possible, and when will it be possible to kind of get to where we think we need to go, and do we have an obligation to do that before we take this step? I mean, those are the questions that I'm wrestling with here, and so that's the focus of my question. But I appreciate your responses on this, and all I had. Thanks.
Is there any further discussion on Senate File 73 as amended? Not seeing any. Senator Oumou Verbeten.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've got a long motion here, so I want to make sure I get this correct. I move that Senate File 73 as amended be passed with no recommendation and be re-referred to the Committee on Rules, and that nonpartisan staff are directed to make technical and clarifying or conforming changes that reflect the committee's work.
To Senator Oumou Verbeten's motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion prevails. Members, we have concluded Senate File 73. We are going to take a recess. Before we do, well, we still have an audience. I just want to recognize that tomorrow is the 60th anniversary of the United States Supreme Court's issuance of Gideon versus Wainwright, which found that a indigent defendant in a criminal case has a right to a publicly paid defense attorney in their legal proceedings, since by definition they are potentially going to be incarcerated if they are convicted. Attorney General Garland made some remarks recognizing the significance and importance of public defenders, not only in defending the individuals, but in our system of justice, defending those who are potentially innocent, as well as those who are may not be innocent but are deserving of a vigorous defense, and holding government accountable for the charges that are brought with the intent of convicting someone of a crime. So we have had a bipartisan history in this committee of strongly supporting the work of the public defenders in their role in our criminal justice system, and we will have further opportunity this year to reflect that in our actions. But I wanted to note the significance of this decision and the anniversary tomorrow. Members, we're going to be in recess until 1:15. Now's your chance to get something to eat. Thank you.